Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Council and I welcome you to this meeting of the Planning and Development Council of the Town of Oakville. Madam Clerk, we have no regrets. Everybody's here. Council, are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Thank you. Could we have a mover and seconder resolve in the committee of the whole? Councillor Elgar and Councillor Khan, all in favor? Opposed? That carries. We are now in committee of the whole with slightly relaxed rules to facilitate public input to these planning items. Council, the first item before us is the consent item number 1, the assumption of the subdivision of Tanglewood. Councillor Elgar moves
I'll move staff recommendation.
the staff recommendation. All those in favor? Opposed, if any, and that passes. We have no confidential consent items. That brings us to our public hearing item. So let me read the public hearing statement. If a person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submission to the Town of Oakville in respect of a proposed official plan amendment, zoning bylaw amendment, and/or plan of subdivision or condominium, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of Town Council to the Ontario Municipal Board and may not be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal before the Ontario Municipal Board unless, in the opinion of the Board, there are reasonable grounds to do so. And Council, I thought we would start with a presentation by our solicitor, Jennifer Huckwith, on items 2 and 3 together, in that they are related. Ms. Huckwith? And then while she's getting in position, the public will be giving us statements and delegations and information on item 2. And if we now give our attention to Ms. Huckwith, she will edify us all.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you had indicated, I'm going to be providing some opening remarks with respect to both items 2 and 3. In looking at them, the two matters are related, and we thought it would be useful to have an overview of the applications which are subject to the various reports and an overview of how they fit together, how Council has different jurisdiction in each of these matters, and the types of decisions Council will be making. I'm taking you back to the original proposal with respect to 1215 Lakeshore Road West. This is a copy of the plan that was submitted. It was for singles along Lakeshore and semi-detached houses within the balance of the site. This application has already been appealed to the Ontario Municipal Board. A hearing has been set to commence on April 15th. Based on the appeal of Fernbrook. Council had previously refused this application since it was not supported by members of staff, council, or members of the public. At the time of the original application, the developer did not own the property which is identified as 1221 Lakeshore Road West. That's the notch at the south of the building, or of the development. Item 2 on tonight's agenda relates to an application related to the area which is shown in gray. It's a public hearing item which is designed to add this application, or add these lands to the original application. The goal is to have the application with respect to these lands joined with the appeal of the other part of the development at the Ontario Municipal Board so that the board can have the entire matter before it and make a comprehensive decision. This application is currently before Council, so Council needs to refuse the application so it can be appealed and everything can proceed as scheduled to the hearing in April. At the time of the pre-hearing in this matter, we knew this application was or had been submitted, and the hearing date was set in a way which could accommodate this matter. This is a statutory public hearing, so the Mayor's comments which he had read about the rights of residents with respect to participation in future hearings would apply to this matter. And that's one of the reasons which he had indicated, that the public, if they're interested in their rights with respect to the hearing, if they're not already registered as as participants in the hearing, or they want to increase or change their level of participation, it's important that they indicate that they are speaking to item 2. Now, since the matter has been set for a hearing, we have been advised by the applicant, who has advised both the town and the board that they intend to proceed with a revision to their proposal when the matter goes to a hearing. This is the current plan that they propose to take to the board. It's for singles everywhere throughout the development, with varying sizes depending on the location of the lots. This is the plan which is attached to item 3 on your agenda, together with a zoning bylaw which represents the applicant's proposed zoning for the property. Also at the back of the room, I have provided charts providing factual zoning data, comparing the proposed zoning of the applicant to some of the current zones. What's different with item 3 is that this is not the normal planning report that members of the public are used to seeing when the town has a planning application. It's a legal report. And the reason is that this is no longer a planning application that council's considering. Council's considering its position in a litigation matter related to a planning application. So we have provided some factual information to members of the public, and also an opportunity for members of the public to make comments to council before it makes its decision on the legal position of that the town will be taking in the hearing. This is actually an increase in the level of transparency and public participation that the town is providing in litigation matters. Normally, these matters proceed in camera, but because we already have a number of documents which are part of the public realm, we've been able to provide this opportunity for members of the public to both know what's going on and to provide comments to council before it makes its decision. There is a confidential report on the agenda which provides legal advice to council and recommendations with respect to the actions that council should be taking with respect to this matter. After tonight, you will be making a decision with respect to that, which would be available to the public. And then legal counsel will be taking that position and taking it to the board in whatever form. Council doesn't have jurisdiction to make a final decision with respect to this application. Any decision will be made at the board, so it is a matter of whether council will be supporting or opposing the application, and any other instructions that council may provide.
Thank you very much for that table setting and explanation. I think it was clear. Council, any questions? All right. Thank you, Ms. Huckworth. Then I think the next thing we'll do is we'll turn to our delegations. And Madam Clerk, would you call the first listed delegation? I understand there's at least one.
Yes, we have Pamela Knight, who is president of the Coronation Park Residents Association, speaking to item 2.
Ms. Knight, welcome. Council and I look forward to your information.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, good evening. Just to remind you and put us in the right place, we're talking about item 2 now, so we're going to back it up from where Ms. Huckworth left off. So this relates to the Fernbrook Homes development application before you this evening, and because it lies within the boundaries of the Coronation Park Residents Association, we're here as such to speak in support of the staff report that recommends denial of this application. As you know, once again, this development is an addendum of sorts to the application that came before council last year. We prepared a detailed PowerPoint presentation at that time to illuminate the issues surrounding the application, which were numerous. We didn't feel it was necessary to go into that presentation again this evening. However, what we thought might be useful was to circulate the initial letter that we had written in response to the original application. That letter is part of your materials that you've received tonight with your agenda, and I'd like to just take you to the top of page 2 of that letter. There you'll see more than a dozen issues that we identified as representing items that were either non-compliant in terms of livable Oakville and the zoning bylaws in effect on the site, or in direct conflict with the character of the existing neighborhood. These issues are of major importance when you consider the fact that the application requests for building heights of 11 meters, third-floor lofts, grading changes that would result in some structures rising 12, 13, and 14 meters above existing ground level in some places. As well, significantly reduced lot sizes, increased lot coverage, FAR ratios with no limits. It does go on. In short, the application before you this evening neither maintains nor protects the characteristics of the surrounding neighborhood. As the staff report notes, it's not appropriate for the use of the lands, and the numerous deviations from the underlying zoning regulations would result in an unacceptable adverse impact on the surrounding area. Thank you for the time this evening. We appreciate the opportunity to provide our comments.
Thank you very much. I'm sure they'll be useful at the board.
Thank you.
Council, any questions? Councillor Duddick.
Not so much a question as a comment. Thank you, as always, for your continued efforts of yourself and Dawn. I know taking a key role in advocating on behalf of the residents and sort of spearheading and putting things in a very succinct manner. It's very, very beneficial. I know both Pam and I are so appreciative of the time and effort you've put in. And for other members of council, it's very helpful having had the reminder of the letter of what the original concerns were. So appreciate that as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So, Madam Clerk, that's the only listed one. We have 2 sign-ins without an agenda item noted. So I'll ask if the residents who've signed in from Tweedsdale signed in to give information on this item or another item. Oh, well then you can be next.
Thank you very much, Your Worship and members of council. I had some time and over the weekend to look at the new proposal for the additional properties and the amendments suggested by the developer. And I'm also speaking to thank staff for not supporting the proposal. My concerns, which were raised the last time I got a chance to speak to council, were such that there's no shadow analysis. The elevation and the height of these buildings would completely erode any chance of privacy. We have mature gardens and a pool in the backyard, and we would not get sun at all in our backyard if this development went forward, even with its amendment. I also have concerns about having a condominium road where there just doesn't seem to be any type of reasoning for it. That carries a risk not only to the municipalities, but also for the taxpayers of the municipality. And the third thing I just want to remind council the last time I spoke was, has to do with drainage and with floodplains. And I have some experience having been a board member on a conservation authority and having been a former councillor in another municipalities. I just want you to be very cautious. Do not allow them to build, and do not ignore the issue of flooding or floodplains, because it just ends up being devastating in the end. So those are my comments, and I'm confident that you'll make the right decision.
Before you go, do you feel that it maintains and protects the neighborhood character of the existing community around it?
In its present proposal, absolutely not.
Thank you.
No, it's far too dense and doesn't maintain the character whatsoever.
So do you feel that it conforms to the livable Oakville official plan?
No, I do not.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you very much for your information. Now, we had one more resident of Tweedsdale somewhere. I can't, the reason I'm saying it that way is because I cannot read the signature. There, you've winkled that out of me. 228 Tweedsdale? You're satisfied that your opinions have been expressed? Thank you very much. All right then, I'll confine it. Is there anyone else from the public with information? Don Cox?
With respect to number 3, if I may?
Yes.
Don Cox, I'm also a member of the Coronation Park Residents Association. Pam and I are our team on this, in this organization. I just want to very briefly state, with respect to the third item, this does not conform to livable Oakville, in my opinion, in our opinion. And as we represent all of the residents in the area, I think that feeling can be expressed as felt by all the residents. I would like to take you to the document that Pam mentioned with the bullet points in it, where she then referenced and said, the proposal with the semis adding the mats does not meet the requirements of the residents, and indeed does not fit with the character of the neighborhood. And just ask the question as I go through, what does the new application do to remove those concerns? It removes the semis and puts singles in? Yes, solves that problem. Look at the bullets. Still a condominium road. Building height still more than 11 meters when the homes are 6 to 8. The setbacks are wrong, the frontages are reduced, the side setbacks are reduced. Increased lot coverage to 40%, that's what we said back then. The new application, the revised application, interestingly enough, goes up to 47%. So we've got semis being replaced by singles and increasing the impervious area of the development by about 20% if you take the 40% up to 47%, which is what the new development proposes. So in effect, it probably increases the massing appearance, even though it is singles. It goes on, third floor lofts, floor area lot ratio with no limit. Now they're suggesting a 70% limit, which is double that allowed in an RO2 at 35. A level of intensification that would double more than the current bylaw would deliver. That was the old opinion. Now it's just 50% more than the bylaw would deliver. So in effect, overall, it's a minimal change, even though it may look on the surface as a significant change. And we very much support the staff and appreciate the work they've done. We very much support them, and hopefully the council will continue with their opposition at the OMB. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your information. Anyone else in the public with information for council on this item? All right, I'll confine it to Councillor Duddick. Yes? I just thought I'd check.
Okay. On behalf of Councillor DeMoff and myself, we'd like to move the in-camera portion, and at the appropriate time, we were hoping to get a recorded vote so that we could send a strong message to the Ontario Municipal Board.
This would be the time. We've changed our rules to permit that, thanks to Councillor Elgar. This is the Elgar rule. All right, any discussion?
I just like clarification on what she's moving. Is she moving
Councillor Duddick,
item 2 or 3?
are you moving 2 and 3? Well, I understood you to say 3, actually, but we need them both.
Mayor, members of council, item 2 is the public agenda, is the public meeting that you should deal with first. And then item number 3 is the information report with the confidential item attached.
All right. So we'll do a series of things. And so I'll read your motion for the benefit of the public. That the applications for zoning bylaw amendment, file number Z 172202, draft plan of subdivision, and draft plan of condominium submitted by Fernbrook Homes, and detailed in report PD 1313, dated February 25, 2013, from Planning Services, be denied. Oh, this is be denied, yes. And you want a recorded vote on that? Yes. Okay, so council, if you wish to support Councillor Duddeck's motion, please rise to be named. Councillor Khan, Councillor Adams, Councillor Grant, Councillor Knoll, Councillor Lapworth, Councillor Elgar, Mayor Burton, Councillor Giddings, Councillor Bird, Councillor Demoff, Councillor Duddeck, Councillor Robinson, and Councillor Johnston. The motion carries. And I won't call them nays because there are none. So then, Councillor Duddeck, can I turn to you for item number 3?
I thought it was.
Which is, the motion I'm looking for is that the report from the legal department dated March 6, 2013 be received.
This is in camera until you...
And once you've dealt with that, council, we'll make it public if it passes.
That's incorporating the confidential legal report, correct?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. And again, I'm going to make you work a recorded vote, please.
All righty. All those in favor of the motion, please rise to be named. Councillor Khan, Councillor Adams, Councillor Grant, Councillor Knoll, Councillor Lapworth, Councillor Elgar, Mayor Burton, Councillor Giddings, Councillor Bird, Councillor Demoff, Councillor Duddeck, Councillor Robinson, and Councillor Johnston. That motion is carried. So now, having passed it, we can reveal it. And the motion basically says, and I quote, that the Ontario Municipal Board be advised that Council does not support the revised draft plan of subdivision and zoning bylaw amendments for the redevelopment of 1215 Lakeshore Road West and 1221 Lakeshore Road West that were submitted to the Board by Fernbrook Homes Oakville Limited on February 26, 2013 in OMB case number PL 120885, since the proposed development, 1, fails to maintain and protect the neighborhood character of the existing stable residential community, and 2, otherwise fails to conform to the livable Oakville official plan. So there you go. And that brings us to item number 4. And on item number 4, we have at least 4, 5, I think we have 6 listed delegations, and I'll poll the audience for more after we hear them. And just in case anybody missed it, we're not making a decision tonight. I expect council will put this matter over to April 8th so that no one in the public who might want to participate would be inconvenienced by the March break period having taken time from their ability to prepare or look at it. And so we're going to hear comments tonight, and we'll hear comments again on the 8th of April. Which one are you? And it's been asked of the clerks by some members of the public, should you speak now or later? And that's a proper question because council prefers to hear new information rather than repeats of information. So my advice to everyone is, if you seek to change the staff view of the matter that's contained in the report, the staff recommendation, it's better to do it tonight than to wait to the end, because staff will have the 3 weeks from now until April 8th to take that into their account and consider what changes, if any, to make to their recommendation. So you're better to give us the benefit of your opinion now rather than to wait. Where council hopes to get with this, I want to stress, is this is a really big deal to council, and we want to achieve a consensus in the community around this decision. And so we want to take the time necessary to try to do that. And so for all those reasons, we're better to hear your opinion now. And we will be in Committee of the Whole on April 8th as well. And our rules are always relaxed in Committee of the Whole. And I can't remember when council has been too harsh on this only tell us new stuff rule anyway. That rule is a very old rule, and it's a very good rule, but when we get into Committee of the Whole and we're trying to really work with the community to create a community, a decision that the community likes and lives with, we're willing to listen to things twice or even 3 times. We just want to get to a good decision, and all information helps us do that. So we'll now start with a presentation by our planning director, Dana Anderson, after which council will have questions, if any, and then we'll go to the listed delegations. Director, we're all ears.
Thank you, Mayor Burton and members of council. It's a pleasure this evening to present to you the report on the South Central Public Land Study, the final recommendations and next steps. Before I begin, I just wanted to take a moment to thank and introduce some of the key staff members who have been involved in this project, including a number of the consultants who have assisted staff with the recommendations. I know with us this evening is Ron Palmer from the Planning Partnership, and both Mark Conway and Matthew Bennett from N. Barry Lyons Consultants Limited. I'd also like to take the opportunity to thank council and those members of the council subcommittee, as well as all of the residents associations and the many members of the public that were engaged in this project over the past year. Specific staff I'd like to mention are those that have been involved in both this study and previously with the Parks and Rec Master Plan process, and those include Nina DeVal, Chris Mark, Michael Brennan, Nancy Sully, Dominic Leonardo, Dave Bloomer, Commissioner Closey, Diane Childs, Leslie Gilwoods, and Brad Sunderland. I think there's been an enormous amount of staff cooperation and collaboration with the public and council on this project. So I wanted to start at the outset by appreciating that time and support from all those individuals. The purpose of the meeting tonight is to present to you the staff recommendations for the school sites and the Oakville Trafalgar Memorial Hospital site, and as you indicated, to receive additional comments and ongoing comments from those members of the public that have been engaged in this process. As you know, this project, the South Central Public Land Study, is one of the many projects under Vision 2057, which guides all of the town's master projects and plans, including this one. And those master plans and projects are covered under 4 areas of strategic direction for the town, including create it, preserve it, afford it, and live it. And the South Central Public Land Study is included with the Parks, Recreation, and Library Facilities Master Plan project under the key strategic direction of live it as part of Vision 2057. And the importance of having these projects considered under Vision 2057 was to bring them together to ensure a coordination of public comments, and that the Parks, Recreation, and Library Facilities Master Plan, when it was completed, was informing the South Central Public Land Study. So where did we start with this project? Council initiated the South Central Public Land Study in the spring of 2012. And the purpose of that project was to confirm the long-term land uses for the sites, which the town had obtained, including the school sites, the Oakville Arena, and the current Oakville Trafalgar Memorial Hospital site. The purpose is to determine the ability as well to fit any of the recreation or park needs from the Parks, Recreation, Library, and Facilities Master Plan, and also to identify any other public needs that could be accommodated on the site. We undertook a comprehensive study and public consultation process, which included considerable input from the council subcommittee, stakeholders, members of the public, and a technical analysis supported by the consulting team. And finally came forward with a report which presents the recommendations for land use options for those sites, which is the subject of the report before you in the presentation this evening. For the presentation this evening, we'd like to provide an overview of the key steps in the study process, as well as the public engagement, and also an overview of the recommended options for each of the sites, and then conclude with implementation and next steps. Leslie Gilwoods is going to provide you with the key steps in the process and an overview of that consultation, and I'll be bringing forward the recommended options, a description of them, including the implementation steps for each one. And Commissioner Closey will then provide an overall discussion on the implementation and the next steps. So at this time, I'd like to turn it over to Leslie Gilwoods.
Thank you, Dana. Good evening. I'll try not to be repetitive because Dana covered the study purpose. So This slide highlights the 5 study sites, the original 5 study sites, the Oakville Arena, the Brantwood Public School, the hospital lands, Lynbrook Public School, and Chisholm Public School. All of the study sites are owned by the town, except the OTMH site, which the town will acquire when construction...
Ms. Gilwoods?
Yes.
We're going to need technical assistance to get a little more volume out of your mic,
Okay.
or else we're going to need some operator assistance out of you to get more volume, but
I can do
people are
that.
having trouble hearing you.
I can do that. No problem. What? Okay, of the 5 study sites, the town owns all of them, except the OTMH site, which the town will acquire when the construction of the new hospital is complete. The 3 school sites were declared surplus by the Halton District School Board a few years ago and closed in June 2010. The town purchased those sites last April to have greater certainty over the determination of the potential future land uses. The terms of reference for the study and for the related council subcommittee were approved by Planning and Development Council in March of 2012. The idea was to build on the work of the previous Oakville Trafalgar Memorial Hospital land study and look at potential future uses for the large publicly owned sites in South Oakville in the context of the Livable Oakville Plan and the Parks, Recreation, and Library Facilities Master Plan, which was released in draft the previous November. The background review work and early council subcommittee meetings focused on the anticipated study process and preparations for the study information night in June 2012. As Dana mentioned, staff from the Planning Services Department, the Recreation and Culture Department, and the Parks and Open Space Departments worked cooperatively throughout the study process. And in the spring of 2012, planning staff attended the public consultation events regarding the draft Parks, Recreation, and Library Facilities Master Plan. That project, as it applied towards 2 and 3, and this study were so interconnected that we planned the study information night to be about both. That night included a presentation about each project, followed by a question and answer period, and an informal open house with information stations about the projects and the study sites. We had approximately 170 people attend that night, and people who were there could share their ideas about the strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities associated with each of the study sites. The South Central Survey was also launched at the study information night. It included questions related to the master plan and the study sites and was available online until the beginning of August 2012. A total of 556 people responded to the survey on behalf of their households. The many suggestions regarding Parks and Recreation facilities were provided to the team working on the master plan, and a report about the survey was presented to the council subcommittee in September 2012. Over the summer, staff also met with representatives of the residents' associations in Wards 2 and 3. They had formed a coalition to lobby for the retention of a community facility hub at the Oakville Arena site and for a community center with a pool at the Oakville Trafalgar Memorial Hospital site. At this point, I want to highlight the importance of the study's webpage on oakville.ca. It has been a key tool in sharing information with the community, and all reports and presentations to the council subcommittee, as well as information related to the public events, is available online. We also developed an email contact list that has grown from a couple of hundred addresses to approximately 730 addresses, and updates and public event invitations have been sent to this list over the course of the study. Invitations to the study information night were also mailed to all owners of property within 120 meters of the 5 study sites, and that was close to 1,000 households. In October 2012, the final Parks, Recreation, and Library Facilities Master Plan was approved in principle. It provided direction regarding the specific facilities to be considered through the South Central Public Lands Study. It also recommended, among many other things, that a single-pad ice arena and the existing park facilities be retained at the Oakville Arena site. A separate report about the Oakville Arena detailed the separate process that site will now follow, including the preparation of a heritage impact assessment and preliminary architectural concepts, including an exploration of the potential relocation of the Kerr Street Senior Center to that site, all of course subject to the 10-year capital forecast. By November 2012, we also knew that no other town departments nor Halton Region had any facility requirements that could be accommodated on the 4 remaining study sites. So we had our preliminary directions. Because of the considerable public interest in this study, staff relied on the website and drop-in style open houses to share information. Staff met with a stakeholder group twice in preparation for each of the 2 open houses. They served as a focus group, and their feedback helped to inform and improve the materials presented to the public. The stakeholder group was comprised of up to 2 representatives from each of the Ward 2 and 3 residents associations and the Kerr Street Senior Center, plus about 3 owners of properties abutting each of the study sites from the email contact list. Staff prepared draft preliminary land use options for the 3 surplus school sites based on the Livable Oakville Plan, community input, and the Parks, Recreation, and Library Facilities Master Plan. Those options were refined based on feedback from the stakeholder group. That group also worked with staff to create draft options for the OTMH site, which were later refined and combined by staff. The preliminary land use options were displayed at a drop-in open house in December 2012. We had about 175 people attend that day, and visitors had the opportunity to indicate their preferences for the study sites using color-coded stickers. Following that event, staff worked with a consulting team led by the Planning Partnership on a detailed analysis and evaluation of the preliminary land use options for the 3 surplus school sites and the OTMH site. That analysis also considered the input from the open house and the public preferred option for each of the school sites, as indicated with the sticker exercise. The technical analysis considered the following evaluation criteria: planning policy, placemaking, the environment, recreation and community services, infrastructure, traffic and parking, heritage, and finally, financial considerations. I want to note that the financial analysis was a very high-level look at the options in terms of financial viability and associated development costs, as detailed in the report. The Planning Partnership presented preferred land use options for the 3 school sites and the OTMH site to the Council Subcommittee and the stakeholder group in early February. The next week, on February 12th, approximately 175 people attended our second drop-in open house to review the preferred land use options. Many people provided written comments which were considered by staff. The report from the Planning Partnership, which detailed the technical analysis that led to the preferred land use options, was presented to the Council Subcommittee on February 19th. At the same meeting, staff presented the staff recommended land use options, which took into consideration the input received at the second open house. Changes were made to the options for all but the Brentwood site. The staff recommended land use options were posted on the study website at the end of that week. An update was sent to the email contact list to advise that the staff recommended land use options were posted for review. And that update also provided information about the upcoming staff report in the planned Planning and Development Council meetings tonight and on April 8th. And there are opportunities to provide additional public input about the study. I'm now going to hand it back over to Dana to talk about the staff recommended land use options.
Thank you, Leslie. I'm going to focus the balance of the remaining presentation on the staff recommended land use options. There is a considerable amount of information and detail in the staff report that speaks to the preliminary and preferred options, and as well as the recommended options. But I will be focusing on the staff recommended options and the additional implementation steps for each. Starting with the staff recommended land use option for the Lynbrook Public School, the staff recommended option is looking at providing for 6 detached residential lots. The intention with these lots would be that they would be zoned as RO1. The staff recommended option provides for the protection and maintenance of the existing woodlot area, as well as the provision of a potential playground on the site. The technical analysis that was undertaken for Lynbrook noted the importance of public accessibility to the woodlot area, and so the new proposed road would provide access to that woodlot area as well as the playground. It would also maintain that area in public ownership. Staff do recognize that there has been considerable interest and an expression of interest for a private school on the site. There have been several comments from the public through the consultation about concerns of maintaining a community use, such as a private school on the site, in relation to traffic, as well as a concern for long-term certainty with respect to the land use. Public comments have also included the desire to maintain and protect the character of the existing residential neighborhood, and staff have noted that with this recommendation. Lynbrook is a designated heritage resource, so it was very important in terms of the staff recommendation to provide for the maintenance of that resource, which is intended through the proposed redevelopment of lot number 5. In terms of implementation of the Lynbrook option, there would be the requirement to amend the livable Oakville plan to redesignate the lands that are set aside for the woodlot and the park area. There is the need to implement through rezoning the RO1 lots, as well as an open space zone for the park area. There is a need to undertake a heritage impact assessment related to the school building and the conversion to a residential use. There would also be the need to consider a draft plan of subdivision to develop the public road as well as the lots, and also the need to develop a strategy for the sale and disposition of the land, subject to a number of terms and conditions. In relation to the Chisholm Public School, again, staff heard considerable input and undertook the technical analysis and are recommending the provision of 9 detached residential lots, which would be zoned RO2. Given the internal neighborhood location and context for this site, staff believe it's most appropriate to provide for detached dwelling lots. There would be improved access to the existing woodlot and added park area in this option. And again, providing compatible development with long-term certainty in the community was a key objective as part of the analysis. This option also provides for the pedestrian connection from Bonnyland to Charnwood. In terms of implementation for Chisholm, again, there's a requirement to amend the livable Oakville plan to redesignate the park area and the woodlot area, implementing our zoning for RO2 for the new lots and open space for the park area. Again, a draft plan of subdivision to accommodate the lots and the public road, and a strategy for the sale and disposition of the lands with terms and conditions. In terms of the Brantwood Public School site, staff are recommending the development of 7 residential detached lots along Douglas Avenue. These would be zoned R10. Also recommending the provision for the relocation of the existing playground to the corner of Douglas and Palmer Avenue, as shown. And staff are also recommending the retention of the listed heritage resource, the front portion of the Brantwood School building, and retaining that for the potential conversion for apartment units, which would range between 4 and 9 units, depending on the specific size of the units. The heritage retention of the front of the Brantwood School site is extremely important from a policy and an area perspective. This is located within the Trafalgar Heritage District, and therefore the option should first consider the retention and conversion of the building. Through a heritage impact assessment, should that conversion not be possible based on the building, the option could also accommodate 5 residential lots similar to those along Allen Street, similar to those being proposed along Douglas, which would again be zoned R10. Again, there has been an interest in the reuse of the property for a private school, but again, that would not provide for the certainty of public access to the playground space or the long-term certainty in relation to the land use. And public comments have also been received which support the opportunities for the provision of the converted units. In relation to the implementation of Brantwood, again, a need to amend livable Oakville to redesignate the park area and also to allow for the conversion of the existing building for residential units. There would be the need to rezone the property to R10 for the new lots and also permission for the converted building and units, and to rezone the park area as open space. There would be a need for a heritage impact assessment to be undertaken to look at the potential conversion of Brentwood School, as well as a reference plan and development agreement to accommodate the new lots. And once again, a strategy for the sale and disposition of the land subject to a number of terms and conditions. And again, I should note there's a considerable amount of additional information with respect to the details of those implementation aspects in the staff report. In relation to the OTMH site, this is a much more complex site. There's a considerable number of ongoing discussions which have to take place in relation to the disposition of the hospital lands, the timing, the demolition of the hospital property, as well as several other discussions that need to take place in relation to other land uses that are proposed for on the site, or that are recommended for on the site. The intention with the staff recommendation is to provide for parameters for the long-term development of the site. And so those parameters include providing for a central location of a new community center and park space as provided for in the Parks, Rec and Libraries Master Plan. The option would also allow for the retention of the existing parking garage, and that's based on the information that we have to date in terms of the structural stability of that garage and the number of spaces that can be accommodated. The recommended option also provides for the consideration of the integration of the high school site, which is a designated resource, and consideration within the high school site for the protection of the chimney swift colony that exists. Again, it's very important for the town to ensure that its heritage policies are appropriately addressed, and the need to first consider the integration of the Oakville Trafalgar High School building with the new development. The remaining area on the site would be considered for residential redevelopment. And again, a number of parameters have been set out in the staff recommendation to accommodate the redevelopment of these lands. And I want to state that it's very important to understand the history of the livable Oakville context on these lands. Prior to the Parks Recreation Master Plan and the direction to accommodate a new community center and park, these lands were considered for redevelopment for the entire site without the addition of those community uses. And at that time, it was recognized that there would be the intent of the policy to provide for a mix of land, of housing forms, with a density to be provided across the entire site. Given the amount of land that's being accommodated with the new community center and the additional active parkland space, the provision of land that's available for the intent of that redevelopment has been reduced. And in order to maintain the intent of a mix of housing, staff recognizes that the density provisions would need to be reconsidered as part of the recommended option. What staff are intending is to maintain the original, I think it was approximately 156 units for the site within the retained residential area. Staff believe that that's an appropriate density within that area given the parameters that we're suggesting, and that it would allow for the mix of housing forms and various units to still be accommodated as part of the special policy area and those policies that speak to the residential redevelopment for this site. Staff are recommending that a maximum number of units be provided, which is 156 units with the inclusion of a medical facility, or a maximum of 206 units without the medical facility on the residual residential portion. Staff believe that that's an appropriate density of mix, given the range of housing types, densities, and forms within the surrounding community, and also to provide for parameters which would include alternative road access, which is shown here. And this is not to say that that is an absolute. There may be alternatives that could be provided, but this is indicating that there's an opportunity to provide for this range of uses with a road configuration that works. Also, staff are recommending that there be an identification of areas for various housing forms, recognizing that along Allen Street, the provision should be for single detached dwellings, as well as along a portion of McDonald Road, recognizing that townhome development should be internal to the site, and that low-rise apartments would be located along Reynolds at the location shown. Staff are also recommending that there be a 4-story height maximum applied to the redevelopment of the site for the low-rise apartments. There's a considerable number of implementation steps that still need to happen, which would be set out with zoning regulations. And the intent with these parameters and the implementing zoning is to provide some flexibility, but still considerable regulations to ensure that there's appropriate development and that the site is not overbuilt. I should note that the option also provides for the provision of a medical facility on a block along Reynolds, which is shown by the M on the option, or it could be within the community center itself. And based on the information that we have that's been provided from the Mississauga Halton Lynn Group, whom staff will continue to work with, we believe that there is flexibility within this plan to accommodate that space either within the community center or as part of a separate facility on the residual land piece. And in terms of the implementation steps, as I mentioned, it's quite complex, and there's a number of steps that have to take place for the hospital site. There's the detailed design for the community center itself and the park, and the potential inclusion of space for a medical senior facility. There's also the requirement for heritage impact assessment for the high school, and the requirement for amendment to the heritage designation bylaw, and a number of heritage permits. There's a requirement for an environmental impact assessment related to the Chimney Swift colony. There's also the requirement to Livable Oakville to redesignate the lands for the community center and park, and to also recognize some of the parameters I spoke to, including a maximum number of units, height limits, and also to permit the provision of a private medical use as an option. In terms of implementing zoning, there's a requirement for zone regulations, design guidelines, and development conditions, again, to ensure appropriate development, which is compatible with the character of the area, and to ensure that the site is not overbuilt. And finally, a strategy for the sale of the land subject to terms and conditions. And I know that there's also a number of discussions that may take place in terms of partnerships and other elements which would be ongoing as part of the implementation process. So with that overview, I know before you, you have an amended recommendation from the recommendation in the staff report, which is that the report entitled South Central Public Land Study, Final Recommendations and Next Steps, dated February 28th, and comments from the public be received, and that further consideration of the matter be referred to the April 8th Planning and Development Council meeting. I'd now like to turn it over to Commissioner Closey, who would like to make some comments with respect to implementation and next steps.
Mayor, members of council, I'll be fairly brief. In terms of once you deal with this matter on April the 8th, then it'll start the implementation and next steps process, which Director Anderson has already set out many of the implementation steps that would be followed up. But in particular, I wanted to note on the community facilities, that's the community center as well as the park locations. Those costs and timing of those projects would be factored into the town's 10-year capital budget. That budget's coming forward in June, so as part of that process, those projects would be considered in that context. The financial analysis that was done for the planning analysis was certainly helpful in illustrating the viability of the overall projects themselves. However, that analysis also provides corporately an indication that the densities and the types of units that were provided on the sites generate sufficient revenue to then allow for the community center and the park facilities to be constructed with limited impact on the tax base. So there's a balance between those two things, and that'll certainly assist as you get dealing with your capital forecast. So at a very high level, just to tease that out a little bit, the analysis tells us that revenue generated from these sites is about $38 million, and there's $7 million that come through the development charges because a portion of the community center is eligible for development charges. That means on the low side, there's about $45 million that's generated for that, the high end at about $58 million. On the cost side, there's about $35 million that is a cost for providing for the community center, providing for the roads and the development of the sites. You'd also need to add to that the about $13 million it costs the town to actually acquire those sites. So that in total adds up to about $47 million for the costs. So you can see when you start to look at those numbers that there is a viable project to move forward at the high level we are at this point in time, and balancing out the land use recommendations that are here and the cost of providing for those community facilities. And those are the considerations that council would take into consideration when you deal with your capital budget in June and into the fall. On the development side of the projects, Dana has set out many of the implementation steps, so that's the official plan and zoning. The town will need to consider in terms of the subdivision what extent we want to take in terms of the development of those sites. Said simply, how much of a developer role do we want to play in the overall development of those sites? More simply, probably on the school sites than on the hospital site. And on the hospital site, you would want to get into considering some private-public partnerships that would enable for the construction potentially of the community center as well as the development sites. You could choose at that end of the spectrum or move all the way down to just simply sell and allow for the development of the site. So there's a whole range of strategies that need to still be considered as we move forward on the implementation. So as council deals with this on April the 8th, it will initiate a lot of those implementation steps that will follow through for us to actually see the sites come to fruition in terms of the facilities. Just to give you an idea of timing, with the OTMH site coming into the town's ownership in about early 2006, it would probably take a few years in order to be able to build anything on that site. 2006? I'm 10 years behind. In early 2016, which is the time we get the site, the earliest you could see a community center built on that site would be about 2017 to 2018. And of course, the parks facilities on the school sites could have happened much sooner than that because they have the availability to do that. So with that conclusion, Mayor, members of council, you have up on the screen in a minute the recommendation for your consideration tonight, and staff would be more than happy to answer your questions.
Thank you very much for an excellent presentation. Council, questions? Councillor Lapworth.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a most exciting project for the town, but I do have a quick question concerning the Brentwood facility. I see that we're relocating the playground for the little folks to enjoy that particular part of town, but for their added safety, the Douglas and Palmer, is that a four-way stop? It's not? Okay. Could that be turned into a four-way stop for the added safety of the little folks using that playground? And would that be practical?
Councillor Giddings.
Thank you. I believe that area of the park is fenced, if I recall correctly, so thank you for your concern. Couple of questions. The Lynn proposal of a 23 to 33,000 square foot medical seniors daycare type of facility, the report stated that it could well be built into the recreation center. If that's the case, what does that do in terms of incremental addition of space? Will it be larger? Will it be just different times of day use? Just wondering if we have the space there, if we need incremental space.
So through you, Your Worship, to Councillor Giddings, we have had some very preliminary initial discussions with the staff from the Mississauga Halton Linns. They've indicated that there's a number of uses and they've assigned approximate square footage at this time. The form of that space, the usage in terms of the times, how well it fits with the community uses as opposed to some of the other more, I'll call it laboratory type testing, maybe better suited off-site, are still ongoing and certainly would be part of the discussions as part of the ability to integrate the various uses that they're looking for, either in one building or in two separate buildings. So that's ongoing, and I know that they have some ideas that they're continuing to provide detail to, but certainly as part of the design, we would look at integrating that. It could potentially be provided for on a second floor space. It could be the extension of an existing space, or it could be part of that integration with the high school facility. So there's numerous options that need to be considered.
So in progress.
Yes.
All right, the staff report also stated that the province, through the LHIN, hasn't indicated any public health care, such as an urgent care facility, be anywhere on the grounds. I guess this is better for Commissioner Closey in terms of, we've discussed this in the past, any update in terms of any possibility for any form of public urgent care facilities?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the letter that is attached as Appendix F to the report is as much information that we really have on the LHINs. So they've listed out the types of things that they're looking at providing on the site, the primary care facilities, a range of services for pharmacy. You can see each of the bullets that are in there. That's as much information as we have at this point in time.
All right, thank you. You mentioned that the parking garage seems to be in pretty good shape, and in the report it said that Halton Healthcare has indicated that it is in good condition. Before I'm able to move forward on something like this, I'd feel somewhat more comfortable with an engineer's report before we decide to keep it and find out that the bones aren't quite as good as we thought when we got the good condition report. Would that be something, obviously it can't be done for the April 8th meeting, just wondering in terms of timing for that.
Through you, Your Worship, to Councillor Giddings. The part of the disposition of the hospital lands involves the assessment of that particular building as well as other matters that have to be considered with demolition and the decommissioning. Certainly what staff are recommending is the provision for the opportunity to maintain that parking garage, given its location and the desire to have a centrally located community center and park, with an understanding that there are a number of steps that have to be taken to assess that in the context of the community center development. Again, in terms of the number of parking spaces, elements of its structural stability, its long-term use, whether those spaces can potentially be leased to one of those other uses that may be off-site in terms of the private medical facility, all of that would have to be taken into consideration as part of the design and consideration with the development. So all of that having been said, it is our recommendation as a preference to retain the facility based on the information we have. However, there is an option, should it not be accommodated, to provide for either underground parking or the option always of providing for surface parking, which is not preferred, but if it were an option, we would have to reconsider the ability to provide for some of the residual residential development, or in fact go back and relook at the park space being provided. So that's certainly one of the elements that has to be considered.
I feel somewhat better. During the last public South Central land use meeting, there was a discussion from staff in terms of the possibility of paid parking for this rec center? Or the consideration for paid parking for the use of the center?
Through your worship, to Councillor Giddings, there may have been discussion. Again, that's an element that would have to be considered as part of the disposition of the hospital lands and the retention of the parking facility in terms of how it would operate. As I indicated, it may be that spaces could be leased, there is an option for paid parking or not. All of that would have to be taken into consideration, as Ms. Closey mentioned, as part of that overall financial picture.
All right. Thanks, Mr. Mayor. This will be my last question. I'll turn it over to someone after this one. In terms of the financials on it, we talk about it being viable. Just looking for a definition on viable.
So just to indicate through you, Your Worship, again, the intention of the financial considerations that planning staff considered for the development of the recommended options was through the consultant to look at, for the land use options being put forward, be they for the type of residential development, the associated parkland that was being provided, associated costs. The intention was at a very high level that there was financial viability. In other words, we're on the right track. For council to consider endorsing these options, it would be a financially viable option. It is not intended, or is it a determinative factor for planning staff in these recommendations, to be a revenue neutral or a determining factor. That's a consideration outside of this, as Ms. Closey indicated, as part of the capital project and the corporate consideration for this. That's certainly not the planning staff recommendation that it has to be revenue neutral.
So we don't have to cover the full nut in terms of the building or put money in the bank or in the reserves, as it were.
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I just want to make sure the public understood from your questions and answers, first, that nothing in this report, were council to adopt it as recommended, makes a determination about whether we keep the garage or not. Merely the planners are recommending that we provide for the option to keep it if it turns out to be sound. So no decisions being made in that way. Similarly for paid parking and the other questions that you had. But there has been some confusion about this viability, and I'd like to add a little bit of dimension to that. The planning department is not really in the business of deciding financial viability. They're in the business of deciding good planning. The consultants did, as a reality check on the side, what would be the relative balance of revenue and costs, and would they be closely matched? And that would be council's decision. Ultimately, council would and financial staff would be determining whether we thought that there was a viability here. My impression of councillors from outside Ward 3 is that they may be somewhat reluctant to build a community center, given that the other community centers were built by the residents around them when they bought their homes through development charges. So there's an issue for Ward 3. We three members of council from Ward 3, we have to keep in mind the sense of equity that the rest of town has about this if we're going to proceed successfully to build a community center. So I hope that clears that up. And I'm myself very heartened to see that there's a close match and that there's grounds to believe that this is feasible because of the viability that you see in the nearly matched numbers at this stage. I have two more councillors, Councillor Adams and Councillor Dumoff. Councillor Adams.
Thank you very much for that discussion about I'll call it the value proposition. And I appreciate all the work that our planning staff have done along with the members of the public on all of the true planning piece of the work. It's very heartening to see the quality of that work. But I'd like to draw the question back to the issue of the relative revenue and relative costs of the various proposals. And I'm looking at Appendix G, where it sort of splits up the various sites and treats them individually. Would it be possible to provide a summary sheet to go along with Appendix G that would incorporate all those pieces, also incorporate the original cost of acquiring the surplus school sites, and back out the element that we think we might be able to recoup in DCs for a planned community facility? And I have one final question, and that relates to, it's really a budgeting question, a financing question. While our finance staff are still working their way through the details of the funding for the OTMH, the new OTMH contribution, I want to know if there is any expectation that the old OTMH site will provide some revenue for that.
I can answer, neither of these questions are really proper for planning.
Well, that's why I say it's not planning questions.
So, I think it's safe to say we can get you a better summary sheet. If you can specify, perhaps in an email to staff, how you'd like it to read, I'm sure staff can comply with that. And to your second question, no is the answer. There's no expectation of making any contribution, using any of those proceeds to support the hospital contribution. Councillor DeMoff.
Thank you. A lot of what I was going to ask has been answered. It was to do with the parking garage. And we've had discussions, because the hospital was able to charge as much as they did for parking, they have been able to maintain it to a very good standard. But maintaining parking garages is expensive, and whether we charge for parking in that or not, there's going to be a significant cost to maintain a 25-year-old parking garage. So I guess you've answered the part that you're going to be looking at it in context of all of that and as part of a business plan. But when we approve this, it shows a parking garage. What is the process if during that review it turns out that no, it's not viable from a business point of view to maintain a parking garage? So what happens then in terms of process and what, because we're approving this plan with the garage there, but you
No,
don't.
Councillor, you're not. You're approving to allow for it to be there. Later, you'll have to deal with whether or not the parking garage is viable.
That could change the whole model of the site. If you
Yes,
have to provide surface parking, just let me finish. Like, if you have to provide surface parking, you're getting rid of parkland. The whole model would change if that parking garage is not there.
Yes, and that's what the planning director said in response to Councillor Giddings.
Still don't understand the process.
We would have to revisit the assumptions, and there'd have to be a new report, a new plan before council.
So then we are approving this with a parking garage without knowing whether it's viable or not then?
No, we're approving it with permission for a parking garage. And if it turns out that the parking garage is not viable, we'll have to bring a new report. So the distinction is, we're not marrying a parking garage. We're saying we'd like to. We're getting engaged with a parking garage, but we're not marrying it. The decision to actually cohabit and live with the parking garage is later. And yes, we'll need a different plan if it won't work. Okay? Any other members of council? Councillor Burr.
I'm starting to get concerned about the priorities of what's the most important function at the end of the day. Is it a rec center? Is it 260 residential units? Is it some open space? Of the 4 benefits or 5 benefits of the redevelopment as proposed here, which one are we the most married to? Or is it we keep coming back into 206 residential units as good planning? Although that number drops if we can build sort of a medical facility, you say that removes somehow 50 units, which is 50 units on 23 to 50,000 square feet. Strikes me as those are pretty small units. So we're working to a density. Is that the deal, or a compatible device? I think the community started off, they really would like to see a community center as their number one priority. And I'm wondering, at the end of the day, is that what we're trying to build, or are we trying to work to a financial number?
So through you, Your Worship, to Councillor Bird. We have policies in the Livable Oakville Plan that identify this as a potential redevelopment area. That identifies the opportunity to provide for a mix and range of housing. Through the Parks and Rec Master Plan, there was direction to provide for a community center and park space on the site. But the intent is still to provide for housing, redevelopment on the site in accordance with the Livable Oakville policies. The intention of the staff's recommendation is to provide for that with compatible development through the implementation with zoning and other measures, as well as provide for the direction from council. There would be a number of steps to determine exactly what that development would be in terms of its physical form. Staff are setting out in the recommendation the parameters which would guide that development. And through the ongoing discussions, some of that may change slightly in terms of the accommodation of space through the Mississauga-Halton-Lynn discussions, or through discussions with a private medical facility if that should come forward, as well as the indication, as was mentioned, with respect to the preferences to retain the parking garage. But it's a very complex site, and there needs to be ongoing discussions. What staff are putting forward maintains the Livable Oakville policies, which is to redevelop the site with a development that's compatible, it's not overbuilt, and accommodate the community center. We're trying to achieve all of that in the public interest. There's no one driving factor, there are a number, and we feel that this recommendation balances all of those interests.
I think you've answered part of the question, is the priority of which it come back, you said it, is to accommodate the provisions of Livable Oakville with the residential component. I think the community, what I'm hearing, are more to try to accommodate a recreation center on the site for the entire community. And then the residual, after that's been accommodated, could be used for residential. We're end up saying, well, we've got to go with the residential and the units per gross hectare, and if we can accommodate a recreational site and keep the parking lot, because that affects the amount of land use and the parking component for the residential. I understand the moving pieces, but I'm just trying to understand whether in the priority, if we're going to get them all, what falls off the table? And is it that magic density residential, or is it the usability of the rec center?
And again, through your worship to Councillor Bird, I don't believe that there is a priority. There's a series of elements that are being accommodated based on the planning context and the direction of through the Parks and Rec Master Plan from Council. And the Livable Oakville policies are approved council policy. So we're taking both of those elements through this very comprehensive study and public engagement and identifying for council what we believe is a reasonable and appropriate land use concept for these lands.
Farther question, with the Livable Oakville and the respect and retaining land uses in the surrounding area, have we ever tried to put, or this is probably the first one that I think of, that this amount of density within a heritage district? And
Through your worship, this is not within the heritage district.
Isn't this site within the 3rd Heritage District?
No, it is not.
What is the only component that's the 3rd Heritage in the thing is the old hospital or high school building?
The hospital, the high school site is designated under Part 4. The Part 5 district is on the east side and to the north.
I thought it went up to a portion of Spruce. Okay, I'll check that out. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bird. I don't see any other questions. It may be helpful to remember at this point that we set out to obtain control of the hospital site so that it could not be flipped to developers and we wind up in front of the board fighting to save the neighborhood. The idea of putting, and we unanimously adopted a Livable Oakville official plan whose goal was to see compatible residential put into the area. Only later did the idea of a community center come up. And so I might have put your question, I might have answered yes if your question had been, are we trying to fulfill livable Oakville and fit in a community center? And to my mind, that's a better description of what we're trying to do here. And that's why I laid such stress on the financial viability earlier. Councillor Giddings.
Thank you. I guess following up Councillor Bird's question, we had a rich discussion earlier on items 2 and 3, as well as with Lynbrook and Chisholm in terms of the importance of maintaining the character of the neighborhoods around those properties. So I think that's where Councillor Bird was coming from, and I agree. Could we go a step further? Councillor Adams requested further financial details. Would it be possible, we have a very rich costing analysis on Lynbrook, Brantwood, and Chisholm. We don't have that same amount of detail on the hospital lands. Would it be possible to include in that report revenue models for different lots, whether it be the number of lots or the type of lots, so we can look at the revenue generated from that density?
Through your worship, I would suggest that we could do that. However, we would then be getting into elements of aspects that we don't know at this point. That information is provided generally in the appendix in terms of single detached lots, townhomes, and apartments with assumptions. If you're asking to test out variations on that, certainly that's something that would be done as the next step.
Or because I agree, it's monetized in the report. I guess it's easier to look, for me, 7 R01 lots versus whatever. I'm just wondering if there was something that could be supplied just to see how that density number works out.
And through your worship, it is provided in terms of a certain number of assumptions around the apartment blocks, townhomes, and single detached, which relates to, I think it's 17 detached, 60 townhomes, 108, which is approximately 184. So that's within that range I referred to of 156 to 206 units. That could move either way. And again, depending on all of the other elements that are brought in, could go down. So we could certainly provide that. We could certainly provide that, but at the level of detail, I'm not sure. Perhaps, as your worship indicated to Councillor Adams, if you could provide sort of some of the provisions you're looking for, that would be of assistance to staff.
So, Councillor, as I understand this, I think what we have to understand is that we're setting the parameters for a box, but we're not finalizing them. Maybe you could think of it as on the units, setting a ceiling rather than determining what the actual, we're setting a maximum ceiling, but we haven't actually decided what the number would be. And so if you will set a lower maximum ceiling and discover later that it's not enough money to build the community center that you want, you will have a pickle. And so if you leave it flexible, you get to match things up later. And if you miss your target now, you haven't got any room to do any matching with. Does that help?
I appreciate your comments very much, Mr. Mayor. I guess where I'm coming from on this is we have the 29 units per hectare, and yet the bottom half of the site won't be used for people living there. It'll be used for recreation center, and as Councillor Bird said, it's density transfer. And so the net result is we end up with 60-odd units per gross hectare north of that. So I'd just like to have a look, and further to my question on financial viability, just so we can have a look with our eyes wide open.
So if I understand you correctly, you want to know if you cut off the community uses of the land and look only at the residential area, how many units would 29 yield? That's a simple calculation. And then you want to know what the yield would be, and that's a simple calculation. We can certainly provide that. Then you can decide whether it's enough. Director.
Just one additional comment through your worship. I did want to note that I appreciate, Your Worship, your comments that planning staff are not looking at revenue neutral or profitability of lots. However, the corporation, as Ms. Closey indicated, would need to consider that in terms of not just the financial number, but there's also a market consideration, which I believe has to be addressed in terms of the types of units you're bringing on the market at any one time. That's outside of our recommendation, but certainly once you're getting into now starting to look at costs relative to the mix and form of housing, you're adding into market considerations that for the corporation would have to be considered, but it's not a planning consideration.
Yes, Director, I think everybody has a human desire to make the whole decision all at once instead of the step-by-step process that this has in fact been and will continue to be all the way out to 2016, 2017, 2018. So, Councillor Elgar.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. Regarding costs, will that information be available at our April 8th meeting regarding the schools? I know we got total estimated cost like $421,000. The taxpayers paid, I think, a little bit more than that to buy the land, being the town. Will that figure you will have for the 8th for everybody so we can see just how this is working financially?
Councillor, I'm confident the staff will be providing all that information that's been asked for.
And if I could just add to that, actually, if you look at page 89 in the staff report under the financial section, it does set out the total revenue estimation as well as the cost estimates, and the paragraph below speaks to the development charge component, which is a third of the cost of the community center, approximately $7 million, and then the cost to buy the land. So the bulk numbers in terms of the overall costs are set out in that financial section.
Just to help me, sorry. So how much do we pay for the schools?
$12.84 million.
For the four of them?
For the school sites, yes.
For the school sites, which, yeah, the four, or three.
Three, I hope.
Thank you.
Much of the financial information that members are anxious about is there. The refinement that we've been asked for by way of display of it is going to be forthcoming. There's no problem with that. So with that, I'll ask if there's any more questions from council, and if there aren't, I'll turn to the delegations. Madam Clerk, would you call the first listed delegation?
First delegation is Amber Way.
Welcome, Ms. Way. Council looks forward to your information.
Good evening, Mayor Burton and members of council. I am the face behind the Limbrook private school proposal that Dana mentioned earlier. I'd like to thank Dana and Diane Childs and Leslie for meeting with me last fall. I'd also like to mention that in December I provided all of you with the proposal and the rendering for the Limbrook property. Thank you. Great. My name is Amber Way, and I am speaking tonight because I am passionate about education. I am speaking tonight because I truly believe that we can work together to bring a unique and exceptional service to Oakville, one that is currently missing from our community. I am proposing that the Limbrook site be used as a small, not-for-profit, independent boys' school. Not just a school for boys, but a school that is specifically designed to meet the needs of our boys. I'd like to remind everyone that Limbrook is a heritage site, that when you look at the intention to designate, both wings of the school as well as the property have heritage value. Once you change that, you start dividing it into lots, you destroy the majority of the school site, and you change its use, then we no longer have the cultural context for that site. Once we remove those things from the property, it's gone forever. I'd like to point out a fact from the December 5th open house. Residents were given the choice of their preferred options for the Limbrook site. And the study does say that the majority of residents would like it to be all residential. In fact, when you go and you look at the study and you look at the number of people who chose options A and B, and those options supported preserving the site and using it for community use, you will see that more people did in fact want to preserve the site than noted in the study. I'd also like to mention that the study mentions that there's strong opposition to a private school use because of traffic. I have met with the administrators at St. Mildred's. I can certainly appreciate that traffic is a concern in the area, and I promise that we will work together to ensure that the traffic flow is no longer a concern and will not be a concern. As well, we're proposing a boys' school. A number of those students coming to our school would already be going to St. Mildred's. Their sisters would be going to St. Mildred's. So we would not have a drastic increase in the number of cars coming into the neighborhood. I'd like to address another point that's mentioned in the planning report, that if a private school used the property, there would no longer be, or there would be limited use to the woodlot by the public. And I'm here to tell you that that would absolutely not be the case. We would more than welcome public access to the woodlot. The report also mentions that a private school site may increase the amount of pavement on the property. That is the last thing we want to do. We, in fact, want to have an enrollment that's far less than what the school holds. We have no intention of increasing the parking. In fact, we would like to move the boiler currently and add a landscaped courtyard into the back of the school, therefore actually increasing the green space on the Limbrook property. I'd also like to address the Planning Committee's suggestion that a private school, an independent school, is not a long-term use of that property. When you look at Appleby and you look at St. Mildred's, longevity is part of the vision. And the beauty of an independent school, we're not talking about a private school here, we're talking about an independent school. And an independent school is run by a board of governors who work and volunteer their time to ensure that that school is sustainable and that the school is successful. Some of you may say that we do not need another school alternative in Oakville. And I would agree that there are great choices in Oakville for our families. But coming as a parent from Southeast Oakville, we have to cross the QEW to get to a lot of those alternatives. And if we want single gender schooling for our sons, we have to go out of town. And I think it's sad that there are a lot of families who are now sending their boys to Hamilton, to St. Catharines, and to Toronto for schooling. And I'd like to change that. As leaders in our community, it's our job to make choices that benefit our children. It's not always easy, but I can promise you it is always worth it. I'd like to show you what's happening in education today. In this picture, you see that the girls are working and the boys are not. Currently in education, boys are disengaged from learning. The studies are showing that girls are outperforming boys across every grade level. We are sending our boys to school and asking them to be quiet and to sit in their seats, and the research tells us that that's not what works for our boys. We're putting our boys in classrooms and we're expecting them to perform the same tasks the girls are doing. But the research tells us that boys enter school 18 months behind girls in language processing. The research is telling us that we need to change what we're doing for our boys. When we look at the statistics, in special education classrooms, 65% of those kids are boys. Boys are more likely to stay back. Boys are twice as likely to drop out of school. And when we look at universities now, in most of the universities, there are 2 girls for every boy. When you go to law school now and medical school, 75% female, which is a drastic change from 30 years ago. It's opposite of what's happening. More and more boys are becoming disengaged from school, and we need to change this. Now, my 3-year-old saw this picture and he said, "Wow, that boy's having a lot of fun." I would certainly agree. I've been in education for over 20 years, and I've been a teacher and a principal. And what I can tell you is that when you put kids in a successful, appropriate learning environment, they do succeed. 10 years ago, I had a dream for Oakville. And that dream was to bring forth an educational setting where struggling kids could come together, where their self-esteem would soar, and where teachers could say they're finally making a difference with our kids. And that became a reality when I was hired to design the program for Wildwood Academy of Oakville, and I implemented that for over 8.5 years. And Wildwood is a huge draw for families to our community. And it's been around for over 10 years, and their exemplary programs draw people here and they're changing lives. Right now, I have another dream for Oakville, and that is to provide our boys with the same opportunity our girls are getting at St. Mildred's. As a community, we came together to form guiding principles for a livable Oakville. And I am proud to say that if we are able to use Limbrick for a boys' school, that we meet those guidelines for livable Oakville. A boys' school would preserve, enhance, and protect the distinct character, the cultural heritage of the living environment, and the sense of community of its neighborhood. It would create employment opportunities for Oakville. It would provide a central and easily accessible educational alternative for families with sons. It would promote another form of excellence in our community, and we know that excellent schools draw families into a community. And we know that when you draw families into a community, that creates revenue. I'd just like to remind you of what we don't want to see in our classrooms anymore with this picture of this young man. And I'd like to show you how happy we can actually get. This is what school should and can look like for boys. If we are allowed to use the Limbrick site as a boys' school, it will be a place where boys thrive, where we channel their energy, not discourage their energy. I'd like to thank Gren Weiss for his beautiful rendering and his exceptional vision for the school. Why Lynbrook? Lynbrook is perfect for what we want to do for our boys. It has charm, it has character, it has a spacious playground for an active sports program and active little boys. There's a gym and a stage for drama, for music, for phys ed, and it would be a great gathering place for the community. As well, there's a library, which would act as a resource center, and a gathering place for both families, for staff, and for students. The spacious classrooms at Lynbrook suit the activities we want to do with our boys. We would plan on having a maximum of 18 students per room, a total of 180 for the school. And those classrooms allow the boys the freedom of movement that they need to be successful. Lynbrook is convenient, it is central, and it is close to St. Mildred's. And that proximity to St. Mildred's is a unique situation, and one that could end and start with a beautiful partnership. I've already mentioned the benefits to Oakville, but there are many more. In addition to creating jobs and providing parents with options and preserving the character of the neighborhood, remember, we would be preserving the fields and the facility for the community. So soccer teams and basketball teams and seniors groups who want to use the facility could continue to do so in the future. I'd also like to mention that we would put an educational resource center in the school so that families from all over Oakville could benefit from the programs. We would bring in speakers, offer seminars, and I see that I'm running out of time. I'd like to say that I'm here to present my proposal for the property. And if you are in favor of it, I do believe we could work together to come to a financial agreement. I am asking you to please vote to use Lynbrook for a boys' school. Imagine the building and the grounds you would preserve. Imagine the boys you would help. Imagine the community resources we would be able to provide. Imagine the difference you will make. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Way. I just have a couple of questions for you. In the time that we've been dealing with school closures, this is not the only school that's been closed.
Mm-hmm.
Have you made an offer on any school site
Made an offer
to purchase any of the closed school sites in town?
from the town?
From anybody?
Well, now they're owned by the town, so I've put forth this proposal, and we would be willing to buy one of the sites. Lynbrook is our first site, and I also like Chisholm.
So we haven't received an offer.
No, because, sorry.
And it seems like you're asking us to put the cart before the horse. So if you are interested
Mm-hmm.
in your idea there or anywhere else, it seems to me that you need to proceed to a business case
Mm-hmm.
and make an offer.
Okay.
We're sort of,
I think,
we don't have a lot to work on
okay,
here.
I think if I may, what we're looking for is a decision by the town of how you wish to divide that lot. So one of the proposals that was made was to have 2 housing sites on David. We're not opposed to that. So what we would like from the town is whether you would like us to purchase the entire property, whether you really feel strongly that you want to put some residences on David, whether you would like to maintain control of the property and lease the property with the option to buy.
My advice is you decide what you need
Okay,
and make us an offer.
perfect.
And by the way, my best information is, two other school sites have come up, and both of them have been turned into other schools. One, Lawrence Skews has become, the public board made it surplus, and another school board took it. There's another site further north where the same thing has happened. I believe that there's another public school site about to be called surplus in South Oakville. And you can find the information on that by talking to, they've already begun the process for the analysis. It's a public process, and you can find out about it on the school board's website.
Okay.
But the town needs something more definite to go on than I'd like to see it turned into a school. So that's my best advice to you.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Elger?
Yeah, thank you for coming and speaking tonight. And I guess what I would hope that you would do is that you would go around and survey the residents that live in that neighborhood to find out if you do have the support of the residents, and probably because of traffic issues, and to see if they're all in favor of what you're proposing. Also,
I will.
In addition to what the mayor is saying should be done. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
The school they're talking about, I don't think they've picked which of the schools they're going to make surplus, but either one of them would serve you better in terms of reduced impact.
Okay, thank you very much.
So your dream's not necessarily got to be on that spot to come true.
Okay.
But you do have to make somebody a serious offer before we can go anywhere.
We will.
Councillor DeMoff.
I have two questions. One is I'm really curious what the school is in South Oakville. I know there's a study going on. I'm not aware of any school that's surplus in South Oakville, so you could share that with the rest of us. I'd just like to know what you're talking about when you're talking to
As I understand it, in south, central, and southwest Oakville, the board has begun the evaluation to decide how to rationalize their space. And I think that means one of them is, this is how it started in southeast Oakville. When I moved here 20 years ago, I arrived at the first of 3 efforts to close Chisholm. And I and my neighbors, it was my first introduction to Oakville, was a school closing. I thought it was the main sport. And as I understand it, they've begun the process that should lead, if they keep up the way they have in the past, to that same thing. But to check with the former chair, who's one of your constituents, and I'm sure he can give you better information as to where they're headed or what their target is.
My understanding was it was looking at all of the land, including the Lakeshore Woods, and whether they would be a new school there or whether a school would be deemed surplus. So it's very up in the air whether a school will even be deemed surplus until they've done all that work. But my other question, though, was...
So just a second. Lakeshore Woods is a school property, potentially, so that too would be available for anyone trying to start a school. One of the schools that's begun, one of the French schools that's begun is on what was vacant land declared surplus by the school board. It doesn't have to be a school closing to provide an opportunity from the board. I'm just meaning to say that Lynbrook's not the only opportunity here.
The other question I had is if you could just briefly, because you ran out of time, you were talking about the community opportunities that you would be able to offer, and I'd just be curious to know what some of those are, if you could just tell us briefly.
Okay. We would like to open up the school and offer seminars for families all over Oakville. Now, St. Mildred's at this time offers a lot of seminars and speakers on women's issues and women leaders, and we'd like to do that for the boys. Opening it up for the community would allow us to have groups come in to use the gym, to use the library, to use the sports fields. So a lot of schools do rent space to organizations who want to come onto the property. And we do have Dorothy Byers here from St. Mildred's. She's going to talk to you about a lot of the community initiatives that St. Mildred's does, and we would be working with them on those same community initiatives, a lot of charity work. You're welcome.
Anyone else? Councillor Bird.
Yeah, I appreciated your I guess, respect for the possible traffic issues that you may create, and you suggested that you could somehow work with the community and come up with solutions to that. I don't want you to minimize that, because quite frankly, the community has been living with traffic issues in that corridor for a great number of years, so much so you realize that we was even put a salary or an enrollment cap on St. Mildred's because of the inability to handle traffic. Now, you're suggesting that you can add more students in the area, serve the entire community, and somehow there's a solution that you think that the staff and the community hasn't found it up to this point with the traffic? The traffic is difficult right now with this school closed.
I'd like to say that this has certainly always been a school site, and this school has been able to hold a capacity of over 250 kids. We're looking at bringing in 180 boys, many of whom will have sisters at St. Mildred's. Those cars are already coming into the neighborhood, and as a parent at St. Mildred's, I know that the administration has been working with both families and staff to reduce the traffic that's happening at the end of David Avenue. So yes, there's traffic in the area during the morning and in the afternoon. I would say that the afternoon traffic is the greatest concern, and St. Mildred's has been working with staff and parents to reduce that. As well, when special events are held at St. Mildred's, the traffic parks all along David Avenue and down Morrison Heights. Now, if we have access to the school lot, then we can share parking, so those cars will no longer be crowding the roads. We can also change start times and closing times to reduce that traffic flow, and St. Mildred's would be willing to work with us on that.
You think St. Mildred's would reduce their enrollment cap that they have now? I think it's at 630, to accommodate your school on the other, sort of share the enrollment on both sides of the street. You realize St. Mildred started with one classroom. And they've grown, and I would imagine that you would like to, your school and the need, as you pointed out, would like to grow as well.
Actually, no. I'm very comfortable with having the school at 180 students. We have no intention of moving to high school. St. Mildred's has a high school. I do know they have I think about 560 students right now. That is certainly not our intention. And as a heritage site, I believe that the town would have a lot of control over what we do with that property, including the parking situation.
I'll leave it at that. We haven't been able to find a solution that the two schools across the street now for the last, well, I know 30 some odd years that I've been dealing with it. So I'm sort of surprised that somehow there's some solution coming forward. All we have to do is open up and expand the school across the street, and voila, that there's going to be cooperation that didn't exist in the past. So I'm...
There are also different leaders now in the school.
I'm taking a little bit of skepticism, I'm sorry.
Okay. No, that's okay. Thank you.
I think to the degree that you're relying upon understandings with Millie's, you may need Millie's to come out from behind you and answer questions as well, if you get to the point where you're making an offer to us.
We do have a representative from St. Mildred's here tonight.
The history of Millie's and this property at Lynbrook is kind of long, and most of us on council were here for most of it. And so this is a little more complex than you may appreciate. And you might want to sit with your friends at the board on Millie's and get full disclosure from them as to the background and some of the representations that they've made over the years with respect to buying Lynbrook, and then not wanting to buy Lynbrook, and so on. I have a sudden feeling that they may not have given you, they may not have told you everything.
Okay. Well, we do have a representative here tonight from St. Mildred's who will be speaking.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
And good luck with your project.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk, the next delegation.
The next delegation is Gren Weiss.
Welcome, Mr. Weiss.
Good evening, Your Worship.
Council looks forward to your information.
Beg pardon? Oh, good. So Amber and David Way approached me back in the fall with they thought, are we crazy or what? They came to me and said, we want to start a school for boys. And I said, oh, that's a good idea, which I believed it was. Then they said, we want to use, we'd like to go to the town and ask if we could buy or use Lynbrook. And I said, that's not only a good idea, it's a fantastic idea. I've never heard of a more natural fit of something melding into something that is already there. A school, which I believe is needed, on a site that has been an institutional, a cultural center of East Oakville for over 80 years continuous, except for the last 2 years. We don't have any of those left. They're gone. This is it. And here's somebody that's come and said, we want to create, not a profit, a non-for-profit school. All the ones we've seen start up, they're profit. This is a non-for-profit school for boys. They like the building. I went through the building with them. It's a perfect school for 180 boys. Exactly. You don't have to add to it. In fact, you subtract from it. It has got heritage built into it. We've got this beautiful neoclassic building built in 1932 when George Bowles were putting addition on in the 50s and the in-between. It's a great school. You don't have to add. You just have to you take the building and you just resurrect it. The parking issue is naturally an issue that has to be dealt with. But you say, are there other schools? Of course there are other schools. But if you're going to embark on this, you go for the best one. This is the best school. So why wouldn't you shoot for this one first? It's perfect location. Lovely lot. It's got beautiful playfield. It's a lovely wood lot. Yes, there is room for selling off some of the lots. I've seen what the town has proposed. I'm not a big fan of single-loaded roads. I'm not a big fan of pie-shaped lots. I think you could probably put 3 lots on David, regular lots, which creates a nice street with interface between sides rather than single-loaded, and you'll probably have the same value that you would have for putting a road in and putting 4 irregular lots in behind the school. There's another 2 lots that we're saying that we'd pick up from the school site where the Heritage Building and the other side are 2 lots. Those are the biggest lots, but 2 of the most insignificant. They're not really good lots. They're right across from St. Mildred's. One's a school with heritage designation, and we'll get back to that because the designation is more for its use and its continuing use rather than just the little neoclassic building that stands there now. Those lots are not good lots. You won't get top dollar for them because they're across from St. Milled's. They're blocked by the traffic. Nobody's going to come and pay top dollar for that. Nobody's going to come and pay top dollar for a schoolhouse to build an over $2 million house. It doesn't work well as a house. It works beautifully as a school, but not as a house. And I'm thinking what we're talking about right now, most people are sort of generally going around traffic. Well, yeah, we have to resolve it. But we're talking about 180 students. We're talking about things we haven't looked into yet. So let's talk about it first before we discard it. We're going after it. Our clients are going after it because it is a lovely lot. And it would be beautiful if you could keep that institutional and cultural use going in southeastern Oakville. We don't have any left. Let's not get rid of them. Once you take these schools and these old cultural things and put houses on it, you can't revisit it. It's gone. Kaputski, you can't revisit it. Once you got houses there, you can't revisit it. Once it's still an institution, hey, 10 years down the road, 20 years down the road, a generation down the road, you can still revisit it and say, okay, it's not working institutionally anymore. But we're losing these. I mean, I've worked with so many institutions that want to infuse themselves into the community, but they can't. They can't. You can't put them into the communities. They end up, I remember working with Fern Hill. If there's a school available back when they were looking, they wouldn't be way up the 9th line where they are right now. They would have wanted to be in the community. That's where people want to be. It's a lovely community to be part of. And that Lynbrook is a beautiful school. And say, for instance, you got 6 lots now. Say, for instance, let's just look at alternatives. Say, for instance, the town did keep the woodlot as shown here. Say, for instance, rather than the 4 lots, which need a road going into it, which is not green, it's all another 300 feet of curbs, roads, gutters, all that sort of stuff. You could put 3 better lots just facing the street. Then all you have left over is the school, which we're dedicating to 2 housing lots right now. I could put a school on that. You could have a 100 by 250 foot play lot in the back, and the school is still going. It's still really totally adequate as a school. So all I'm saying is, sure, there's hurdles, but why shoot for something when it's a beautiful school? And when you think of Lynbrook and the number of people who've grown up in the community, what that has meant to the community, and if there's somebody with a viable connection that wants to come forward and preserve something like that, you listen. And you try to make it work, and if it doesn't work, then back out. That's fine.
Mr. Weiss, thank you. When did you first meet your client?
I've known him for years.
When did you discuss the project first with your client?
Last fall, I would think, beginning of November?
I beg your pardon?
Beginning of November.
Okay, so...
At which time they were told to put a proposal together by December?
Sorry?
By December 1st?
So, as I understand it, you're a professional, and you're fully cognizant, and you totally understand land purchase and sale.
Yeah.
And we haven't received an offer. And that's really, as you know, the first step to having that discussion, right?
In all fairness to our client, who was dealing with planning, they were told to first put a proposal together for consideration by planning.
And what happened?
Exactly what's happening right now. It's gone to the town, it's been considered, and sure. But see, it's come back that this is not an option. It's not an option to have a school. The option they're preferring is that we do 6 lots on there.
Well,
and I'm talking not only from financial, I'm talking from good planning, I'm talking from all.
Okay. So you've lived here a long time.
Oh, yes.
You've heard of the traffic issue in Lynbrook.
I have.
You heard the counselor say that even though Lynbrook Public School hasn't been operating for 2 years, traffic is still a problem there.
Mm-hmm.
And you've heard me say the town needs a viable, an interesting offer if we're going to proceed down that road.
Okay. That's the first time we've heard it. So that's not to say...
I'm happy to help.
Okay. We'll put an offer.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Oh, wait, sorry. Councillor Demoff.
Thank you for coming out. And actually, similar to what the mayor was saying, it's difficult for us to evaluate the viability of this without having some sense of, you've talked about part of it being a school, part of it being sold to the town. So I think there's something, and I don't know what advice you've been given up to this point, but I think for me anyway, to see what you're proposing, it would be very helpful.
That's and all I can say, to just sort of say something right now without looking at exact dollars and cents, I would say that the 4 lots you're going to get out of a cul-de-sac street are basically a wash with 3 lots on David Terrace. Because the ones, if you had 3 facing there, they're much more valuable than 2 pie shapes and single and substandard lots on a single loaded street. And from a planning issue, it would complete David Terrace as a nice interactive two-sided road. That leaves 2 lots remaining, 2 housing lots. So you're going to say that you can sell 2 private lots for what you could get either rental or selling for somebody to make a school out of it. I'm sure a proposal from us will far outshine that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, Mr. Weiss, I just want to leave you with your own words when you were describing the relative difficulty of getting any money from the lots on Lynbrook, the 2 impaired lots, as you called it. I wrote it down. You said they're blocked by the traffic, so those lots won't get very much money. That's the nub of this for council, that traffic issue.
Okay,
So let's start with an offer so that we know whether we're serious or not, and then let's see where we go.
Well, just to back on that one, it's not only the traffic, but it is two major lots looking over a parking lot. I don't believe, I design houses for people. I know where people look for their value, and when you're crossing the street into the parking lot of St. Mildred's, nobody's going to pay top dollar for those. You're really not.
Right.
I wouldn't.
So it comes to, you do have an organic understanding of the
Oh,
issue.
yeah. Absolutely. All we were asking is that there's, we can reconsider and backtrack a bit, and we'll put an offer in, sure.
Well, we're not making a decision tonight. To turn this into a serious discussion requires an offer.
Okay. You've heard it? That's fine. That's cool.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Madam Clerk, the next delegation.
Next delegation is Dorothy Byers from St. Mildred's.
Welcome, Ms. Byers.
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity.
Council looks forward to your information.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here this evening and to have this opportunity to speak with you, so I am appreciative of that. My name is Dorothy Byers, and I'm head of school at St. Mildred's Lightbourne School, and I am representing the Board of Governors and the management at St. Mildred's Lightbourne School. Our school is a direct neighbor across the street from the former Lynbrook Public School, as has been mentioned already this evening. I am happy to offer our comments in support of the proposed Lynbrook Boys School, which offers a unique opportunity for Oakville. A single-gender boys' school would be welcomed by the community. Often during our admissions conversations, new families ask about the availability of a boys' school in Oakville. They desire the same opportunity for their sons as that which is available for their daughters at St. Mildred's Lightbourne School. At this time, parents who are in search of this option see their sons travel to other municipalities, and I know that Amber mentioned that in her presentation. A boys' school would keep families together with their children at adjacent schools. They would be able to enjoy the Oakville community as a family, a goal well established in the Livable Oakville Plan. SMLS has been a proud member of the Oakville community for more than 45 years. During this time, as you know, our school has flourished. As a not-for-profit, independent school, we find ourselves in a position of strength, garnered from our management structure. Unlike other schools that are private in nature, an independent school has a board of governors who has fiduciary responsibility. Board members act as stewards for the school. They are members of our broad community and bring richness and expertise from professional backgrounds as they develop the vision for the school to ensure its sustainability. Any and all funding that is directed toward the day-to-day functioning of the school. The proposal for Lynbrook Boys School as a not-for-profit independent school sees the same structure, which speaks to long-term sustainability. SMLS is a community partner with a number of organizations. Our close relationship with Home Sweet Hope, Kerr Street Ministries, Special Olympics, and Art House are concrete examples. Our budding relationships with Big Brothers Big Sisters of Halton and the Lighthouse for Bereaved Families are new developments. We see ourselves as a resource for the community, not only as a venue for community gatherings, but also as an excellent source for volunteers, both students and staff. These people are keen to learn more about our community and to make it the best place it possibly can be through their gift of time and energy. We have offered opportunities to the community to participate in and learn at our Women in Leadership Exemplary Learners Speakers Series, as well as other knowledge and resource sharing events. These attributes contribute directly to Livable Oakville planning as they sustain and develop the health of our community. This is a desire we know we would share with the proposed Lynbrook Boys School. We know that there is a concern voiced by our surrounding community about traffic. Historically, there has been a school across the road from SMLS. We are prepared to work together with the management of Lynbrook Boys School to reduce concerns. In fact, if our information is correct, a number of the boys at Lynbrook would be the brothers of girls at SMLS. The population of the proposed school is also smaller than that of the former Lynbrook Public School. However, we would be more than pleased to investigate and study traffic flow, to develop a plan to ease any congestion, and bring the plan to fruition. We are responsive to concerns raised by our neighbors and would continue to do so. Lynbrook's Boys School will add value to the community. The Lynbrook School location is ideal. Historically, a school has sat on the site for many years, more than 80. The historical designation is a clear indication of this fact. The proposed school would bring richness to the opportunities for families provided by Oakville. St. Mildred's Lightbourne School has an international recognition for our work and attracts families to the town of Oakville. We know that the proposed development of a boys' school would also enhance not only Oakville's desirability as a community, but also its stature nationally and internationally. Thank you for the opportunity to share these comments this evening.
Thank you for coming and sharing your information with us. Council, do you have questions for Ms. Byers? Ms. Byers, I do have a question for you. Is Don Belovich still on your board?
Yes, he is.
When the town bought the land, Mr. Belovich contacted me, and he told me that the board of directors had decided that they had no interest in the land.
Mm-hmm.
Does this mean, your appearance tonight, does that mean that your board has changed its mind?
There was a decision made, I would believe, Your Worship, once the school had built the addition onto the east side of the building.
I beg your pardon?
There was a decision made not to pursue Lynbrook once the addition had been put onto the east side of our existing property.
So what is your interest in the boys' school?
Well, it would be a wonderful, unique opportunity for families in our community to have a girls' school and a boys' school. And I know, Your Worship, just through the conversations that I've had on initial admissions meetings with families, that there is a need for a boys' school. There's a real interest in having a boys' school in the community.
Do I understand correctly that your interest is only that of support, that Lynbrook would not be standing behind the boys' school in any way?
What do you mean by that?
Well, one of council's issues is the long-term viability of any use that goes on the site.
Yeah.
If we were to sell the land to a private school, nonprofit or otherwise, it would be in private hands, and should the school fail, we would then have no way to, we would have a problem on our hands from a planning perspective in terms of potentially unwanted development out of the wreckage of the failure of a hypothetical school. So if I'm understanding you correctly, Lynbrook's not going to stand behind this boys' school. It's not going to vouch for it, not going to back it up.
Do you mean St. Mildred's, Your Worship?
I'm sorry, I do. I mean, St. Mildred's isn't going to stand behind the Lynbrook. I got my schools reversed. So St. Mildred's is not going to stand behind the Lynbrook Boys' School and back it up and vouch for it and make sure in any way that it doesn't fail.
We would be more than happy to work with the school, but we are not, there would be two independent schools.
And you're going to make the use of your property available to this school for parking and other purposes?
When there are opportunities for community events, as we used to with Lynbrook Public School, we would call and gain permission to use that site, and Lynbrook Public School did exactly the same thing with us.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. We look forward to any developments. Councillor Bird.
I appreciate you coming. As I mentioned previously, we've been working with the challenges in that neighborhood for some 30 years. Some of them of your making, of your success, and some of not. One of the ones that we can't change is the right-of-way or the road width. It's only 15 meters wide, and it should be at least 20. So we've got a confined area. Now, you went through the cooperation. You remember the last expansion, a group called the acronym NAME? Does that ring a bell? Neighbors Against Mildred's Expansion. That was,
yes, I do recall that.
And one of their concerns was, major concerns? was traffic. And St. Millard's, what you're saying, recognized that maybe there had to be limits placed on enrollment because of traffic in the area?
Well, and through your worship, that is something that was part of the master planning with St. Mildred's, and
Right.
you've already referenced the cap of 625.
Right, and the idea, and so the St. Mildred's expansion was limited to 620 or 630, if I remember. Your lawyer was
625
Jane
is-
Pepino,
Yes,
and that was worked out with the residents.
yes.
Now you're suggesting that, are you suggesting that you could be some of that enrollment transfer to across the road, or are you going to stay within that limit? That's what I'm trying to get back, because I can't see how putting more students in cars are going to solve a problem that we haven't solved in the last 25 years. And you're saying you will do a study again.
Well, I would suggest, sir, that it gives us an opportunity to certainly look at flexibility and timing, and that there may be some solutions that, with all respect, through your 30 years of working through this, that were not possible because of a lack of flexibility and timing of day.
Well, that's my problem. I said we have dealing with the traffic problem and with engineers and studies and we're changing designs. We have still today with, and I think you're at the 620, are you not?
No, we are not. We're 560.
560. So you've got built in some expansion, and that's in the traffic now, as the mayor is saying, without any students going across the road. I'm just, at the end of the day, it's all nice. I'm just wondering, putting two schools with that enrollment on 15 meters of road allowance doesn't work, and it creates traffic problems and real safety concerns for the rest of the community who don't appreciate on a daily basis. And how are we going forward? I don't see what the need of the school. I'm just wondering why we picked on this location and why not. Would you feel the same way if it was at Chisholm School?
Well, I think the opportunity that I stated about the proximity, and certainly for our current families who have girls at St. Mildred's and are looking for a spot for their boys, would be to some extent diminished by a different location. And the Lynbrook School is, as you have heard this evening, a beautiful site. It's a beautiful building. And if there's, work that we can do to maintain or sustain that, we'd love to see it stay as a school.
Final comment. This issue is there was assurance given by not necessarily you, but the board of St. Mildred's to try to work to solve the problem of traffic and whatever it is. So I'm sort of surprised that saying, hey, this is a good opportunity to readdress that issue. And I would be interested to see with any proposal you have for how adding more students, regardless of gender, I'm just saying more students in that area is going to solve a current serious problem. And why, if that's the case, we can solve it, then there's no need for the enrollment cap on St. Millard's. You can expand again. Okay, thank you.
Hey, Ms. Byers, I really appreciate the fact that you came, because it's given you a chance to hear for yourself in person some of the issues that have built up over the years between your school and this council, through many generations of this council, I should add. And so you now have a better idea, I think, of what you'll have to address in order to succeed with your appeal to us. I mean, I hope, been generous and helpful with our information about what the problems have been. And I think it's fair to say that in the absence of something that gives us certainty and confidence and certainty in the result, you might find it difficult to succeed. So you have to put your thinking caps on.
And I do appreciate your comments, Your Worship, and look forward to working with Council. And certainly if there's work to be done with the proposal for Lynbrook Boys School, then it will give us an opportunity to put some concrete thoughts to paper.
In no way, Council not making a decision can't rule anything out, and I don't want to be taken for suggesting that it would, but you do need to understand that the hill has a bit of a incline to it that you have to go up.
Thank you for that.
Okay.
Okay,
Thanks very much. Madam Clerk, the next delegation.
The next delegation is Janet Haslett Thiel on behalf of Joshua Creek Residents Association, Chartwell Maple Grove, Clearview Oakville Community Alliance, Oakville Lakeside Residents, Association, Trafalgar Chartwell Residents Association, and West River Residents Association.
Do I have them all?
Welcome. Council looks forward to your information, and we'll just see how you do this, but feel free to
Okay.
use your time how you like.
Good evening, Mayor Burton and Town Council. As you know, my name is Janet Haslett-Thiel, and I'm the president of the Joshua Creek Residents Association. Tonight, we are delegating on behalf of Chartwell Maple Grove Residents Association, Joshua Creek, Oakville Lakeside Residents Association, Clearview Oakville Community Alliance, Trafalgar Chartwell Residents Association, and the West River Residents Association. We begin with our sincere appreciation for the significant effort of the town staff who worked on the South Central Land Use Study and the Master Parks and Rec Plan. They have lived up to their commitment to a comprehensive public consultation process and made themselves available for additional questions and concerns of a large group of residents with a wide range of views. Thank you for listening and understanding the significance of the impact these recommendations will have on our neighborhoods. When we began this process, each of the neighborhoods in Southeast Oakville had a wide range of views on how the school lands and OTMH could be used. In the past year, we've had numerous discussions with our residents, town staff, and other residents' associations. We've shared our wishes, evaluated many options, listened, and debated. We have reflected on the impact the loss of 3 neighborhood schools, the pending change with the hospital, and the need for a community hub for our community. In evaluating the staff's final recommendation, we stepped back to assess if, when implemented, would it achieve our common goals. These goals are, first and foremost, we all want a multi-generational community center with parkland and a medical facility. We recognize that these services are best located on the hospital lands based on the size and activities it will provide. We all expect residential development to respect the character of the surrounding neighborhoods unique to each of these properties. We expect that the old OT building can be partially incorporated into the new community center, therefore preserving a link to the history and culture of the area. We expect that future development will be done in compliance with Livable Oakville and for the hospital lands in particular at 29 units per hectare. If there are to be changes to a higher density on any specific part of the land, then we expect further negotiations with the immediate community, especially on the design of that increased density. We appreciate the importance of active parkland to making Oakville truly livable and expect development will provide and preserve green space. We are all concerned that the development of these lands be done in a timely manner, minimizing residential disruption and eliminating vandalism of vacant schools and lots. We support the staff plan in principle. It achieves many of our goals. Our concern is ensuring that the development respects the unique character and heritage of each of our neighborhoods and meets the defined standards of Livable Oakville, including density provisions. In conclusion, we express our continued appreciation to the town staff for their efforts in balancing all of our goals. We look forward to participating in future meetings regarding density and detailed designs from developers for the residential development and the building of our community center. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and do appreciate the content of that, and I'm confident that those meetings can take place quickly. Perhaps as soon as tomorrow they could start. I've had an indication from staff they might be available then. Let me turn now to Councillor Giddings.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want, Janet, Danny, Boyd, Nick, thanks for coming out. Your tireless efforts and engagement over quite a while. Just want to thank you for coming out this evening.
You're welcome.
Just wanted to mention, actually, we are joined by a good number of our board members as well this evening. We'd like to thank them for coming and joining us here too.
And staying till this late hour.
All right. Well, thank you very much. You evidently achieved total understanding. There are no questions. Oh, wait. Apparently there are.
Interesting.
Well then, Councillor Byrd and then Councillor DeMoff.
Yeah, this is a unique situation where we've had a collaborative effort by a number of ratepayers groups, not only in one ward but two, on a common problem. And you just alluded that there's some other board members that are here with you. Maybe they would stand and be recognized by council, because a lot of work has gone into this by a lot of people. Thank you very much. As I say, that is unique. I don't remember 4 or 5 ratepayers association getting together on a common purpose since Forge. And that was, some of them were going back then, but I hopefully that this will come to fruition and we'll can get what you're looking for. And I noticed in the priority of things you mentioned first and foremost was the need for a community center. I pass that on because I asked the same question of the directors. What was their #1 priority as well? Director of Planning.
Thank you, Councillor Byrd. Councillor DeMoff.
I wanted to ask you, and you may not be able to answer because it may not have come up in your meetings, but given the discussion that took place tonight about Lynbrook School, whether in any of your meetings you did have any discussions about a preference for that being retained as a school or being converted, and what, if you had any comment on what we heard tonight.
I guess I would be the best one to address that. I'm the president of the Chartwell Maple Grove Residents Association, which is the area immediately surrounding Lynbrook School. We have had very general discussions because we were not aware that there was any kind of a serious proposal to develop, to do anything with the Lynbrook School site other than what the town had been looking at. We, at this point, still really don't have what I would, as His Worship has referred to, a solid proposal that has some financial planning behind it that gives us something to work with. I would suspect, and again, it would require us to survey our residents, but I would suspect that there would be some resistance from the neighborhood to the addition of another school in that corridor. The traffic issues there are still not resolved, and everybody just kind of grins and bears it, I guess, at this point. But the thought of perhaps adding another school with 180 students might not have a warm reception. But that is just my best guess at this point.
Any others? Thank you very much. Madam Clerk, would you call the next delegation?
Next delegation is Diane Burton.
Welcome, Mrs. Burton. Council looks forward to your information.
Thank you. Good evening to our members of the Planning and Development Committee and councillors. My name is Diane Burton, and I am here this evening to speak to you on my own behalf on the subject of the South Central Public Land Study, final recommendations and next steps. When I first heard in 2012 that the town had purchased these redundant schoolyards we are discussing tonight for $12.8 million, I thought, wow, finally this crew is doing something to preserve our open green spaces and support the sustainability of our natural environment in Old Oakville. However, as the planning process evolved into the recommendations before you tonight, I can assure you that the natural environment is not being held as priority 1, the first goal in the Oakville Environmental Strategic Plan, and I am very disappointed in this outcome. I also believe I am now speaking to you somewhat on behalf of the 95% of the people who, when public discussions began in 2012, did not want any of these extreme changes to their established neighborhoods now being thrust upon them. They did accept the fact that the old Oakville Trafalgar High School and hospital site was effectively now a brownfield site, and it would be repurposed to housing and would be the site of a community center, a new swimming pool, a park and playground for nearby neighborhoods. However, by the end of the numerous public input meetings, over which time I believe the public was effectively processed out of their initial demands that the remaining publicly owned lands, the other 3 schoolyards, be left as undisturbed as possible. The various scenarios put forward over the past 2 years for the cannibalization of these open spaces basically included the choices of high, higher, or highest density overtaking their green space, coupled with choices of a tiny, a little, or up to a half-acre more preservation of woodlot and park space. Thus, a demoralized public appears to have acquiesced to having their heritage spaces pretty well destroyed in order to keep some small remnants of these lands for nature and outdoor recreation. These are the lands that were established and bequeathed to their neighborhoods by the generations of Oakville taxpayers living here up to 100 years ago. I am asking you as their councillors, the only people who can now stand up for their rights, to vote against this proposal and tell the administration that they do not have permission to rezone and sell out the majority of land space of these 3 schoolyards, as now proposed in this study. Initially, at the meetings, public input was loud and clear by the hundreds of red dots in the do nothing or do very little columns, that they did not agree to having their established parks, heritage buildings, and schoolyards being decimated so the town could continue a new endeavor of becoming property developers of public lands. The recommendations before you are being put forward by a town administration that is now in the business of selling out publicly owned lands for immediate build-out with a carrot of a promise that the profits are being put into general capital fund and may be used to build a much-needed community center and rec center sometimes in the next 10 years. I believe our administration has simply decided that land values in Old Oakville are high and valuable, and they want a piece of the action. The shocking reality is our town has decided that publicly owned lands in Oakville are effectively up for grabs, so every neighborhood must be vigilant in protecting their open environment from being repurposed and sold off for the sake of propping up the town's capital budget. Gerlach Gardens and the Oakville Arena and Park have recently escaped this fate, but keep a watch on your nearby park because Oakville's parks and playgrounds are still under scrutiny to be sold off. Buying up other public land at first option prices and selling off most of it, or just rezoning public land for development, is another process underway. In addition to the pending losses of publicly owned lands, the Town Council has approved hundreds of zoning changes in established neighborhoods and are continuing this rezoning to such an extent, I believe soon there will be little left of the physicality and character of the town of Oakville that existed only 5 years ago. Entire blocks of old green neighborhoods, their woodlots, their gardens, are being systematically cleared out and replaced by massive lumps of multi-concrete development. Larger well-treed lots are being stripped clear and filled in with multi-housing units. Oakville's large, rare, and famous lakeside estates are being rezoned, chopped, and paved into mini subdivisions. Our clear-cutting of beautiful woodlots is so extreme, it made a feature article in the National Post. Yes, owners of lots should be able to divide into one lot into 2, a huge estate even to 3. But the infill development now taking place is a transformation of Oakville that the electorate did not vote to approve. Remember that maintaining open green space and a natural environment is a first priority of citizens, as recently confirmed in surveys conducted by the town. I'm asking our Committee of Planning and Development to reject this build-over of open space that is implicit in repurposing of the public school properties at Lynbrook, Chisholm, and Brentwood schools. You might ask, the town bought up redundant schoolyards and we have the responsibility to demolish the hospital and we must get our money back. That, of course, is understood. However, the total bill is $12.8 million for the 4 sites, and the total take estimated on the OT high school lands and hospital site is about 51 million. Money enough to pay for the land and demolition. Thus, I am asking you to restrict the number of single lots to be built on the grounds of Lynbrook, Chisholm, and Brentwood to no more than 2 or 3 lots each, to be situated on existing streetscape. The cost to build new roads and services will be saved. The zoning, the livable Oakville, the heritage amendments will not be necessary to change, as they now must be altered for these current plans. And at least $3 million per site will still be garnered. Yes, go forward with developing the OTMH and OT school lands with all precaution to protect as much green space as possible, and the colony of over 200 threatened chimney swifts as a first priority in the design of the site. I know designs for conserving a small part of this site as protected chimney habitat is very attainable and can be achieved with proper environmental architectural planning. I'm requesting an ironclad contract for the preservation and function of the chimney swifts as the chimneys as swift habitat be obtained, and a plan to preserve this bird habitat is confirmed before anything else changes on the site. When the swifts arrive from Peru each spring, exhausted after their long migration, there must still be 4 chimneys for their nesting and roosting location set aside to honor the commitments to preserve the biodiversity of our town. Please remember, the primary reason our mayor and majority of councillors were elected in the past 2 municipal elections were to promises made at the time to control growth, protect our green infrastructure, preserve our green and open spaces, and enhance habitat for wildlife species. Recent citizen surveys show these goals are still first priorities and expected to be taken by our town council, and they apply all over Oakville, not just in the far north. The people of South Central Oakville have certainly, over the past 60 years, paid sufficient taxes that the establishment of a new community center should have been planned and financed for them as their share of community development, without having to sell out their neighborhood's crown jewels of green space and heritage to pay for facilities they too deserve in their neighborhoods.
Hear, hear.
Thank you for listening to my concerns. I truly hope you will ask for redesigns on these recommendations and preserve the 3 schoolyards intact within these neighborhoods. When these lands are gone and demographics change back to needing schools and yards in these neighborhoods, how will you resurrect this land and provide for these needs? Thank you very much.
Thank you for your information, Ms. Burton. Questions? Thank you very much. Oh, wait, Councillor Adams?
I just wanted, when the school boards declared them surplus, if the town had done nothing, they would all have been sold to the development community and developed to its maximum capacity. Do you understand that?
Yes, I do, but the thing is, as I said, you were wise to buy them and it was appreciated. But because your mandate is to preserve green space, that's what we thought the money was going for. We can recoup the money. And also, do you remember zone it, don't own it? You have the total capacity to zone those schoolyards as public yards to be kept for the future. Zone it, don't own it, just zone it. No, those are not development lands. Those are school lands being kept for the future. Just because you would have given developers permission to zone them doesn't mean you had to do it. And that's why those schoolyards can be preserved. And the money is there. You can put 3 nice lots on each of those, get $9 million, save the money from the construction, and save the yards. $7 million for the community center, and yes, you have a brown site to develop carefully. And that's my opinion. Thank you.
Okay, I
Councillor
guess we'll end on agreeing to disagree on some of the
Zoning.
financials and how zoning
Well,
works.
they're not firm. I just got them from the reports.
Anyway, we, councillors, we don't argue, we receive information. Let's not cross that line. Councillor Grant.
And in the spirit of receiving information, you had mentioned you had a resource, a newspaper article that mentioned how we're stripping our green space. I would love to see that article. I've just tried to do a
It was
quick
in the
search
National
here.
Post for the Birch Hill lands.
And I've done a quick search of the Post site and I can't find it. So if you could send me a link to that, I'd love it.
Yes, I will.
Thank you very much.
I think oh goodness, thousands and thousands of trees on the wooded lot on Birch Hill. And that's just one. The amendment you were making tonight, that cleared out almost 2 acres of woodlot. I'm actually writing a book with pictures of everything that's been lost in Oakville in the last 3 years.
Thank you. Councillor DeMoff.
Can you just, thank you for coming tonight and for speaking. I'm unclear on exactly what it is you're looking for. You think the density is too high on these lots of what we're proposing, or you want them to stay as schools? I was just unclear in what you were saying. At first it sounded like you wanted them to remain exactly as they were, and then you talked about adding, so it sounds like you're not opposed to having development on them, you just think it's too much development. Is that correct?
There is an area, if you look at the development pictures, where you could fit on 2 lots on Lynbrook, perhaps along David Drive, existing, maybe 2 to 3 at Brentwood, just on the edges, but just on the periphery. And the schools themselves could be rented out. The region rents land at Ennisclare for some of its space. We could rent out those schools with some little refurbishment. They were quite willing in their reports to have the citizens walk up to Oakville Trafalgar site if they wanted to park, and I think perhaps workers could walk down from the parking lot to the Brentwood site, so you don't need all the traffic. But you could put a little bit of development in on the edges, but preserve those lots, because yes, you were wonderful to be wise enough to buy them, but who thought it was for being a property developer? It was very disappointing.
Thank you for your information. Madam Clerk, the next delegation.
Miranda Huska.
Welcome, Ms. Huska.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Miranda Huska, and I've lived on David Avenue for over 20 years. So if you'd like to ask me any questions about traffic in the area, I'd be happy to answer them from my personal experience. But I'm actually here to speak on a very personal matter to my home, because we are very impacted by the proposed development of the Lynbrook property. And I'll start by saying tiger eyes. Picture 2 bright eyes that shine out of the dark jungle before they pounce. Very bad luck to see tiger eyes in the jungle. The expression tiger eyes is a feng shui term used to describe a home built at the T intersection of 2 roads, and that's considered to be very bad luck by many people. And it's not just superstition, as you know, cars are known to careen off roads into homes. If you set a home at the T end of an intersection, that possibility is greater. So it's fair to say that there's many people who would not buy a home that's located at a T end of an T intersection of 2 roads. I wouldn't buy a home or a piece of property located at a T intersection. However, thanks to this plan, my home of 20 years on David Avenue is potentially being transformed to just that. A home situated at the T end of an intersection of 2 roads. And this makes it a very undesirable piece of property. Undesirable to me and my family who've lived there for 20 years, and undesirable in the resale property market, which lowers the value of my home significantly and those of my neighbors who are affected the same way. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is adverse impact, significant adverse impact. As you know, adverse impact is defined as a decision, practice, or policy that has a discriminatory or disproportionately negative impact on a protected group. The adverse impact may be unintentional, but it's real. The recommended option for the development of the Lynbrook school lands has a disproportionate negative impact on the families of David Avenue, and particularly the 2 families, mine and that of my neighbors to the south, who, as long-time property owners and taxpayers, should be considered a protected group. I think we've been paying taxes for a long time. Let me tell you a little bit about the 6 homes on David Avenue, the quiet little cul-de-sac north off Lynbrook Road and east of the Lynbrook School property. 3 are owned and lived in by families who have lived there for 20 years and more.
One home is owned by a builder who will be selling and moving as builders do, and the other 2 homes are under construction by builders for future sale. So there's really not very many of us who are really thinking about this for our future living. There's really only 3 homes that really are considering this. And let me tell you, we were not surprised when we learned that the town was considering selling the school and the park space for the development of the residential properties because it is valuable property. Nor were we surprised that it was not recommended to keep the school building for community use. We were disappointed but not surprised. In tonight's presentation by the school, it was news to me, and I have to say that I and I think a number of my neighbors would welcome keeping that building as a school property. However, that's another point. But we were surprised mostly when we saw that with this new plan, the road for the development came off David. Because we had all assumed incorrectly that any road access to the development would come off Lynbrook. And we made this assumption because doing so would not impact any residential home, the Lynbrook property being across from St. Mildred's. And I do understand that there is interest in mitigating the traffic impact on Lynbrook, as we do experience a 15-minute rush hour every day during St. Mildred's school drop-off and pickup. However, the traffic from the new development will still have to enter Lynbrook Road where it intersects with David. So the traffic impact is only rerouted slightly. So I spent some time looking at the plan and how it could be, and I thought, well, maybe it can be changed to accommodate some new residential properties without creating this adverse effect on the residents of David. And it can be done by facing 2 of those properties, or 3 perhaps, on David Avenue and locating the other 2 or 3 with an access road from Lynbrook. However, it's true that this would not be as tidy a little set of properties to develop as the current plan proposes, with a lovely vantage of parkland that would be that at least 4 of the properties would see. So that didn't work. But then I started thinking about it. Well, why should it? Why shouldn't it? 2 of the properties might not look onto the park, and the irregular lots might be smaller. However, they would still be large enough to build lovely new homes. And the property values of the homes on David, particularly mine and my neighbors, would not plummet. And I ask you, why should the property values of the new residences be favored over the property values of the existing taxpayers who've been paying taxes to the town of Oakville for many years? Why should we on David Avenue get a road and a view of the side of a large home, and most importantly, reduce property values? Why should we experience the negative impact? There's other adverse effects of locating a new road on Lynbrook, more lighting on the street, because you would have to have more lighting for roads. If you revert to my jungle analogy, that's more eyes, menacing eyes looking at our home. But really, what I'm asking you most to do this evening is to perhaps reconsider locating that access road to any new development from David Avenue. And I'm asking you that when construction be commenced, if it does commence, that you consider the residents of David Avenue and not have construction vehicles parked on David Avenue so that the work can continue. And finally, I'm asking that should you go ahead with the development as recommended, would you be prepared to purchase our home for the same value that you're asking for the new properties, adjusted for existing services and house value? I'm just asking for fair and considered treatment. We do not wish to leave David Avenue. We raised our family there, and we have a home and grounds that we love. But we do not want to suffer from the negative financial impact that would come from this proposed development. So I hope you will seriously consider these concerns and relook at how the property will be developed, particularly with regard to the placement of the access road to it. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you very much for bringing that to our attention. Any questions, Council? Thank you very much. Madam Clerk, the next delegation.
There are no further delegations listed.
All righty then. Are there any other members of the public with information for Council on this matter? Well, who wants to be first? I saw 2 hands. How about closer first and farther second, and farther move up so that you're closer for your turn? So you're first, sir. Please come to the mic and identify yourself for the clerk and share your information with us.
Thank you. I'm Dr. Brian Levitt, and I was torn whether or not I was going to speak tonight. I had originally thought that we were going to be hearing some more general things, and perhaps I should be speaking at the next council meeting. But with what I've heard, I thought maybe it was good timing to speak a bit tonight. And I won't take much of your time. Thank you.
As I said at the start, that gives us more time to try to actually accommodate you.
I appreciate that, and that was part of what made me think perhaps I should speak tonight instead. I live on Allen Street between McDonald and Galt, facing the hospital lands. And I've been speaking with my neighbors along the street, and we had reached a general consensus about some concerns we have about road planning. And I'd heard a number of things tonight about traffic concerns, and I'd heard about safety of the little folks from Councillor Lapworth. I appreciated those thoughts from the area of Douglas and Palmer, I believe you were talking about. So my thoughts are around these issues. I had drafted a letter that I hadn't sent off yet, so I've got it on my cell phone. I thought it might be easier if I read that. I didn't bring my glasses, but I think I can magnify it. So.
You're welcome to read it, but you're also welcome to send it, and it'll have just as much weight as if you said it.
I appreciate that. I'll do that also. Thank you.
Yes, please do that also.
Thank you. And I apologize for my informal appearance tonight. I was just going to come in and listen and be in the back. So,
It's committee of the whole. It's meant to be informal.
Thank you. So the letter that I've written, again, in speaking with all of my neighbors along Allen Street, they had asked me to represent them on this. So thank you for the opportunity to continue to give input on the redevelopment of the hospital lands. I'm writing to you on behalf of the owner residents of 319 to 351 Allen Street, with houses facing the hospital grounds from Galt to McDonald. We appreciate that a great deal of time and effort has gone into the planning process, and the revised plans are a good reflection of that. I truly believe that. We're aware that the current plans indicate what are called conceptual roads. We appreciate that at this point the roads are conceptual, as any new roads in a town must be planned with careful consideration of density and traffic and impact on other roads in the surrounding neighborhood. One of the potential roads suggested is a through street that connects Reynolds with Allen. These plans also call for Reynolds to be developed with apartments and access to community center, with detached houses being planned for McDonald and Allen, if I read the plans correctly. So far, planning also shows an active parkland along Allen Street opposite our houses on 319 to 351 Allen. By design, this creates an even more family-friendly environment, from what I can see, and likely increases the number of children at play on Allen between McDonald and Galt. Currently, though Allen Street's a relatively busy street, and I think anyone in the neighborhood is aware of that, it's relatively busy with the surrounding neighborhood, but there are no through streets that connect Reynolds and Allen within our block. Allen Street simply does not have the traffic volume of Reynolds, which has full traffic signals and is a direct route to and from the QE. The development plans continue to reconceptualize Reynolds with apartments and a community center as more dense and heavily traveled as a street than Allen, which is conceptualized from McDonald and Galt as having detached houses and parkland. So our concern is that the current plan suggests that one alternative for the conceptual roads is a full through street that connects Reynolds and Allen Street parallel to and just south, maybe just a couple houses south of McDonald. While there clearly must be access to the planned townhouses, obviously, we believe that a through street from Reynolds to Allen creates likely potential for significantly increased traffic on Allen Street, and more concerning is that such an additional through street poses significant future safety risks to the neighborhood children, both on Allen Street and the proposed through street itself, which hopefully will have children on it. Our concerns are not simply a case of not in my backyard. We believe that city planning always requires that conceptual roads must be studied carefully within the context of the planned increases in density, and consequent traffic patterns that are likely to occur. We'd appreciate the opportunity to be involved in further consultation about the conceptual roads in order to actively problem solve and avoid potential traffic and safety issues for the neighborhood in general. We believe that if we work together, we can find safer neighborhood alternatives that are more compatible with the varying densities planned for the hospital lands. For example, a street from Reynolds that passes by the proposed apartments and townhouses could dead end just before either Allen or McDonald. It doesn't have to go all the way through. This would be far safer for children in the neighborhood, and the proposal has the additional benefit of creating 1 or 2 more plots of land to sell to developers for detached houses, thus increasing revenues for the town. Further, developing townhouses on a dead-end street is also likely more attractive to future buyers and thus developers. I think Gren Weiss, who was speaking earlier, might be able to speak to that better than I would. I don't have expertise in that area. We're also open to other suggestions that meet the objective of better protecting the safety of children in our neighborhood in the future, and the result in a traffic flow that does not create other potential problems, such as the ones you've been dealing with for 30 years that you mentioned. In conclusion, an extra through street from Reynolds to either McDonald or Allen would likely be a greater safety risk for neighborhood children in the future, while also losing the opportunity to develop 1 or 2 more lots of detached housing. The residents on our block have consensus on these issues and have agreed for me to write this letter communicating our concerns to you. We appreciate your consideration and look forward to further and constructive dialogue. Thank you.
Thank you for bringing those things to our attention. And have you spoken to your residents association?
I've just only recently been in touch with them. I'm new to town politics and understanding these things, quite honestly.
Well, it's, as you've heard tonight, we're quite rich in the number of residents associations in Oakville. It's fairly distinctive of our town. And I know most of the people on your residents association executive. They're all concerned about the quality and safety issues that you've raised, and I urge you should talk to them. And we will certainly follow up with your request.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
So thanks for bringing that. Thanks. Any questions? Councillor Elgar.
Not a question. Do you need a motion to go beyond 10 p.m.?
It looks like we do.
Okay, I'll give you that.
Councillor Elgar has moved that we carry on past the hour. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? That carries. Thank you very much, Councillor Elgar, for being on the ball. Thank you, sir, for your time here tonight. There was oh, there you are. It's your turn now. Please introduce yourself for the clerk and share your information with us.
My name's Scott Barber, and I just have a few points from sitting here this evening. I haven't had, due to the nature of my personal schedule, I haven't had the liberty to attend any of these in the past, but from my perspective, and I know I share this from a number of my neighbors, again, it's possibly our fault that we haven't gotten involved earlier through our residency associations or coming here, but when the town purchased the extra schools, we kind of hoped, assumed, or whatever, that at least some of the public space, or more of the public space than is being proposed, would be retained for the public. In our neighborhood, the schoolyard doubles as a park to the surrounding area. So with the loss of the school, we're losing a significant amount of grass and trees and open space. And so when they expanded Maple Grove, we lost proper playing fields there. We lost proper playing fields when they expanded New Central, and we're going to lose more baseball diamonds and soccer fields when we build if we proceed building all of these houses. So I don't know, I'm just kind of expressing regret. I live on a small cul-de-sac, and we know a good number of our neighbors, and we were rather surprised that there's such small areas being retained for the public use. So that's my one point. The other point is, my second point is that if we can't recoup the cost by selling off the land into lots, I would be it would be interesting to see what other ways we could generate the funds, because I am aware that part of Ward 3 does fall within the Midtown Core redevelopment, and whether development charges from that future redevelopment could go towards this. I'm a distant spectator of all of this. So, and then the second thing is, to the councillors not from Ward 3 or from an older part of Oakville, this problem will come to your door in the end, because you know, you've got schools in the north with 12 kindergarten classes in one school, and that will not be the case forever. So I think Ward 3 is facing this first because we're one of the older parts of town, and to a certain extent, I expect we're setting a precedent on what will be done with surplus public land in the future. Because, as I said, you know, these schoolyards are also parks. And yes, there is a small area kept at Chisholm. There's a tiny area kept at Brantwood. And the woodlot is being preserved at Lynbrook, which is admirable. But again, you know, we have Joshua Creek running through our neighborhood. You can't go down there and play soccer. You know, there could also be a distinction between green space and open space for physical activity. Because, I don't know, you know, people my age feel that we've lost a lot of that space. And, you know, it helps when it's evenly distributed across the community, rather than having to get in the car and drive to a certain area that has 7 soccer fields. I don't know if we have such an extreme, but my point is that it's better to have one field here and there rather than a megaplex that people have to drive to, because that's not really the community that I grew up in. So, thanks.
Thank you, Scott. You're primarily talking about Chisholm then, if I understood.
I'm not just Chisholm. Like,
well, I'm just trying to place you. You're.
Oh no, I'm near Chisholm. Yeah.
Thank you.
I am near Chisholm, but.
I was just checking if I deduced correctly
Yes,
that you live near Chisholm.
I live near Chisholm, but I think, you know, I don't live immediately near Chisholm, so we didn't get one of those letters. But I think the problem that we face is the problem that we all face. Like I understand that people who live near the schools don't want traffic, but you know, open space doesn't generate lots of traffic. But I understand that there needs to be a financial side to it, and I'm just interested if we've explored every possible avenue, because you know, once the buildings are down and the land is divided, it's over. And
it would help us though if you told us where you live.
Oh, I live off Devon Road, towards Ford Drive. I'm off Devon Road.
Just give us your
address. Stills Lane. Stills Lane.
Okay. Thank you very much for your presence here and the information that you brought. I can share with you briefly that when we went to put a small soccer field for little kids on my street, the sentiment was from some of my neighbors was the opposite of what you're expressing. So we on council do live with a certain amount of push me, pull me, and it is always fun to try to find that balance. So thank you for coming and helping us look for it. And does that complete we have another one? Yes, sir, it's your turn. Please come down, identify yourself for the clerk, and share your information with us.
It's Melvin Meisner. Mayor Burton, you mentioned that you'd rather see some information come earlier rather than later. I just happened to be browsing through the Star in January when I was picking up the car, and I noticed this. Apparently, the Minister of Health has appointed Dr. Samir Sina as a senior consultant on long-term care, and he was in this article, it was purported that he just finished a 198-page report to the ministry on home care and community support services. And my understanding is he's just about to publish another report because on the need for long-term care. As part of this article, he mentioned in here that he said, for example, we need to triple the number of long-term care beds in our province over the next 20 years, while emphasizing the need to keep seniors in their home as long as possible through the improvement of care and wellness program. So the ministry is looking at these things. It just, in one of your previous open houses, I expressed the concern that I thought that before you deconstruct and blow up an existing facility, that the province should perhaps sign off on something like this and say we don't need those beds for anything. So it looks like they're in the planning stage, and yet you're in the planning stage to literally deconstruct that facility. So I'm just bringing that to your attention. I understand that his report is due within weeks, and when I asked exactly when, there wasn't a definitive answer. It was, it was near term, not long term. And then the other observation that I had is that I lifeguarded, supervised swimming pools all through and have been active in swimming all through my most of my life. And when I was one of the super pools that I ended up swimming at in Calgary, and ended up eventually supervising, it was at one of the parks, Queens Park, and kitty corner to Queens Park just happened to be Queens Park High School. Well, eventually what happened, that was just a random occurrence of facilities. Eventually what happened is one of the fellows that used to run that pool became a phys ed instructor over there, and they started using that. Now when you take a look at the facilities that you're planning, it seems to me that it would be better to put those facilities in over at Trafalgar High School, where if you take a look at the number of students over the next 40 or 50 years that would learn how to swim and use the facilities, it would be a better spot to put that in. And then I think what you should do is also look at the not only the capital cost, but the total overall cost, the capital cost plus the operating cost and plus the maintenance cost over the 40 or 50 years that that the facility will be in place, and look at the benefit analysis, whether it just benefits a few people in the community or whether by building it in proximity to a high school, as you have in a number of other cases in Oakville, that you actually increase the social responsibility as far as, swimming and so forth. And all you have to do is save a few lives to have people, that are comfortable in the water. So that's just my observation. I wasn't going to mention it, but you said bring it up early rather than late.
Yes, thank you very much. I want to tell you that for 3 years I've been working hard to talk the province into believing that we need more long-term care beds, and I know the doctor that you mentioned, and I'm hoping that he'll persuade them. And nothing would please me more than to get more long-term beds for Oakville. But so far, it's been a very hard no. As you heard tonight, I hope you heard, we won't even get the hospital until 2016.
Oh, I see.
So should the government change its mind, I'll say, rather than something funnier, like come to its senses, we'll still be in good position to try to arrange the hundreds of long-term care beds that the town needs, in my opinion.
Now, I wasn't going to mention this tonight, but you said bring it up early rather than later, and I thought, well, perhaps you're not aware that he's about to issue a report, which would be probably something that you might want to consider.
I'm very grateful to you for coming and airing the news for my colleagues. I am aware of it, but I had given up any hope that we would get any.
Well, the ministry,
so I haven't mentioned it. But
the ministry seems to be focusing on it because there's been this first report, and this would be the second report. And I've forgotten, He's a director of geriatrics,
Yeah.
and...
He's an amazing man. You
Yeah.
have to, if you ever get a chance to hear him speak, he speaks often.
Oh, okay.
He's amazing, and if you follow half of what he tells you to do, you'll have a much happier, older period of life. And as for the, anyway, I appreciate you bringing it up.
Okay, thank you.
We are alive to the need and frustrated by the lack of positive response to date.
Okay, take care.
But we won't give up.
Okay.
Thank you. Anyone else? Sure, come on. Just please identify yourself for the clerk and share your information with us.
My name is Jim Goodfellow. I live on Copeland Court, just off of Lynbrook. I didn't intend to speak tonight, but in listening to the sound, I thought I'd just give you 3 observations, and I respect your overtime on this meeting. First is that in the various discussions I've had with the concern about loss of green space, which you've heard from several speakers tonight, it's very real. And the concerns are very real. There's a tremendous amount of work have gone into your study and the staff proposals, but the concern is still there. There's also a underlying suspicion that this is all driven by finance. And so a number of you have raised issues about, looking at, I think as you proceed to resolve this, you should be able to show the community, a clear financial picture in terms of the sources of revenues, the costs, and how it fits together, because there's a genuine concern that this is a finance-driven undertaking. And with respect to finance, which happens to be my background, Councillor Giddings raised about the issues. Remember that this financial picture at this stage is a collection of estimates on the revenue side, estimates on the cost side. Make sure there's rigor and reasonableness in that as you proceed, because this is a very significant undertaking for our community and for our town, and there's a lot of debate and concern about as people looked at the various numbers that are being kicked around, and no real feeling as to the rigor that lies underneath them. So I would share that concern. The final observation I'd have is this was the first time I heard about the Lynbrook Boys School. I've lived off of Lynbrook for 35 years. I know the traffic issues, but we've survived. So I hope that they come forward with a solid proposals, and and that they get an objective hearing. So my comments.
Thank you very much, Jim. Let's see. I can assure you that we will be approaching the estimates with great rigor. We're very proud of our financial record, and we're not about to throw it away. We've worked hard to get to the point where general tax levy went up 7% a year the 4 years before 2006, 5% a year the first term I was mayor, and less than 3% a year this term. We don't intend to go back to those old unsustainable days.
Right. No, and part of its explanation too, because these are all estimates. And they're not factual at this stage, or very little. You've got estimates on costs and development side. You've got estimates on the revenue side. So it's all understanding of people. So I take your and the rigor around estimates is needed.
Yeah, when we decided as a council to purchase these surplus sites from the school board, our only motive at the time was to protect them from going straight into the hands of developers and then having redevelopment battles. Right. It was only after that the community around you, the community of Southeast Oakville, the 5 residents associations, came forward with a huge petition and a request to create a community center. And so, as I said earlier this evening, we built our official plan around our original objective, and we are now trying to fit in a community center and to make it feasible. So I appreciate you coming and sharing that information, and I appreciate the chance to repeat that message and the hope that it gets heard.
Well, Nice to be your spokesperson.
Appreciate it a
Thank
lot.
you.
Anyone else? Well, then I'll confine it to table. Councillor Elder?
Your Worship,
Does that mean you don't want me to confine it to table?
No, that's fine. You can confine it to table. I just wondered, when staff bring it back to us again in April, I know we've asked for costs, but I also wonder whether staff could take the time to prepare a bit of a presentation to help educate everyone on how rec centers have been funded in Oakville, in that they are normally, it's development charges, and that in fact the development charges then become part of the housing price, because I don't think too many developers swallow the development charge themselves. To try as an education also, I think it would be helpful to everyone.
Yes, I did voice that at the start, but I don't think it could hurt to give an explanation. I didn't really see I don't remember anybody having any trouble understanding it, but it couldn't hurt. Belt and suspenders, let's do that. Councillor Adams?
On that same note around how facilities are constructed, we probably also need to discuss the way in which we do replacement funding for renewal of facilities. So when an old facility gets replaced or repurposed or upgraded to the next standard, how do we fund those things? So I think there needs to be a little bit of, I'll call it Finance 101, but along the same lines as Councillor Elgar was discussing.
I'm so tempted to suggest that as budget chair you ought to do that, but I know you're ill with bronchitis, so we won't put that on your shoulders, but we will look to our staff to provide that. So I think it might be time to ask for a motion to receive the one that was shown to you, the new proposal from staff. Councillor Elgar moves it. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? That is received. Now, Council, in the remaining few minutes, we have 3 items. The Economic Development 2012 Annual Report, which was to be an opportunity to celebrate the great work that our Economic Development Department has done for us. But given the hour, it may be that since the report is always more detailed than the presentation, and I know you all read your reports very diligently, perhaps we'll look for we'll receive this information subject to your consent, and we will invite the Economic Development Department back another time to give a presentation for the public. And if I could, I seek consent to that. Can I have a motion to receive? Councillor Knoll, thank you. All in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. And then I suggest we do the same thing with item 6. And you can show your assent by giving me a motion. Councillor Adams, thank you. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? That is carried. And then it brings us to C1, the litigation or potential litigation confidential report from the legal department. If you look at that overleaf, you'll see that it concerns a matter above us, as far as I'm going to go on it. Does anyone need to do any more than what's requested there? Do you need to go into camera? The proper motion then, if you don't, is that staff be authorized to proceed in the hearing as outlined in the report from the legal department, February 26, 2013. Councillor Knoll moves that. All in favor? Opposed, if any? That is carried. And I can make public now that motion is that staff be authorized to proceed in the hearing of ROPA 37, 38, and 39 as outlined in the report from the legal department. ROPA means the Regional Official Plan Amendment. And then we have no advisory committee minutes, and it would be good to have a motion to rise and report from Alan Johnston. Councillor Johnston, thank you. All of those in favor? That is carried. And I rise and report that the Committee of the Whole has met and made recommendations on consent item 1, public hearing item 2, discussion items 3, 4, 5, and 6, and confidential discussion item C1 as noted by the clerk. A mover and seconder for the report, Councillor Elgar and Councillor Lapworth. All in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. Is there any new business of an emergency, congratulatory, or condolence nature? All right. Is there a mover and seconder for consideration of the bylaws? Councillor Robinson and Councillor Giddings, thank you. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? The bylaws are adopted. That completes our agenda. Thank you for your time and attention. Planning and Development Council will convene again on April 8th to further consider the South Central Land Study. And it's been great working with you. We are adjourned.